Why does Andrew stand out in a room?
Despite what he said in the interview, he has tremendous presence. He's incredibly charismatic. Like I said, was in Hollywood for a long time. I've been around a lot of movie stars. It's like, I've never seen anything like that. Like the charisma coming off that guy is just, it's something else. Just
What
like
is charisma? Is that presence?
we heal in the present moment, right? When we're able to live in the present moment, because when we're in the present moment, we're not in control. And so really what I'm trying to do with people, what I try to do with Tate, what I'm trying to do, with you right now, is just come into the present moment and just to be with each other and then to see what's there. If you're going to be a therapist, you have to get in relationship with your clients because they got hurt in relationship and they're only going to heal in relationship. So you have to be in there with them.
Now we actually had a very interesting segment. I asked you, because you did this for Andrew Tate, to the psychoanalyzing. So how am I doing, David?
If you grew up bullied and had feelings of like, self-worth, like you weren't sure that you were lovable in some way and you felt like an outcast, I can imagine like that becomes embedded in our consciousness in some way. And then you overcame that. And then now you become this successful person and who's doing legitimately good things in the world, like, and at a high level, at a very, very high level for such a young man. Like you have a lot of wisdom and so I can imagine that, like that, the new reality of, being this powerful man with all this wisdom and all these, people watching you and learning from you, and the old self of, I'm not good enough, I'm an outcast, I'm unlovable. Like, I wonder if they ever kind of come into conflict a little bit, or that old part of you maybe prevents you from really receiving fully how powerful and good you really are. I'm never going to betray myself ever again for anything or anyone. That's it. That's the code that I live by.
Ready?
Ready.
David Sutcliffe is not only one of the most famous psychotherapists on the internet for psychoanalyzing Andrew Tate, he's also a famous Canadian-American actor. He has risen to fame as the character Christopher Hayden in the American cult classic TV show Gilmore Girls. If you don't know Gilmore Girls, shame on you, because it has been cited by Time magazine as one of the greatest 100 television shows of all time. If you wonder how great of an actor David is, he was nominated for Best Performance by an Actor in 2014 for the role of Detective Aidan Black in the TV show Cracked for the Actor Award, and a year later, for the same role, he was nominated for the Canadian Screen Awards. 2016, he was nominated for the Best Actor for his role in Proof as Dr. Leonard Barlis for the Golden Maple Awards. Now, as of his career, online in 2020, David was one of the first people who saw the potential of rising social media star Andrew Tate and offered to psychoanalyze Andrew. Andrew said yes to that, and emerging from this was, in my eyes, one of the best mental health podcasts of all time. It has now 416,000 views on YouTube and puts David's work on the map. Just 4 weeks ago, David interviewed Andrew Tate again, this time in person in Romania after Andrew was released from jail for unproven accusations that seemed to the majority of people as a witch hunt to diminish the enormous voice that gives self-respect back to men all over the world. This podcast episode has acquired in 4 weeks until now almost 3 million views and rightfully established David as a strong pillar in the mental health industry. I felt I wouldn't give my audience the ability to have an unbiased listen to this podcast, and to you, David, if I don't at least try to take out the emotional charge of the following name, Andrew Tate. Since the media has done such an extensive propaganda attack on Andrew, I'm sure some of you ask yourself how someone like myself, who made thousands of videos to help people with their mental health, anxiety, depression, and relationships, can support Andrew. To you, this is my statement. I want to tell you that I support Andrew Tate with all my heart. And even though I never met him, consider him as a friend for the following reasons. He has helped more people to practically improve their mental health than any other person in history. If instead of watching short clips taken out of context, you watch longer podcasts like the one with my guest David, you will see that he teaches people respect, accountability, physical fitness, focus, and ambition. He also unknowingly taught acceptance and commitment therapy to people, which is about the acceptance of emotions versus reactive behavior to emotions, and acting on valued actions to support one's life. In addition, he gives 25 million a year to feed hungry children. He built an orphanage in Romania and has a charity for street dogs. The woman who accused him has accused 7 other men before in the past of the same crime, of which sadly one person has taken his life. As a member of my audience, who I know you deeply respect me and appreciate me for the value I've given you over the years, I ask you to be open to this conversation. But as always, not just believe me, but gather information, apply it, and think for yourself. Today, this will not be just a podcast because I don't like the structure of podcasts. This will more of a conversation between 2 skilled mental health practitioners. We are following our excitement and curiosity. David Sutcliffe, I'm very excited for our conversation today.
That was a beautiful and well said introduction. Thank you. I'm happy to be here. Happy to be here with you. I'm a big fan of yours and your work. So I think it's going to be a really interesting conversation.
I love that. We know you, or most people know you from the Andrew Tate in current times, from the Andrew Tate podcasts on the internet. The most recent one got, I think, 3 million views. But you've been a successful actor in the past. And I don't know if you currently, I couldn't find, are still active or if you left that field behind.
No, I officially retired, I guess 5 years ago. I mean, I've really been out of the game for longer than that. But yeah, I originally from Canada, just grew up south of Toronto, started my acting career in Toronto, eventually moved to New York and then to LA, and had a nice 20-year run in Hollywood, working in mostly television, but some film, and had the opportunity to be on one of the most classic TV shows of all time. So I had a lot of fun in Hollywood and met a lot of amazing people, worked with a lot of talented people. It was a dream come true, really. It was, the success I had was, beyond my wildest dreams. And now I'm here. I just, I found I was always doing, a lot of actors do therapy, of course, because it's kind of part of the job. You really have to understand yourself, understand your emotions. And I'd started therapy probably in my mid-20s. But got serious about it in my early 30s after I got married, and it was just, the whole thing was a disaster. And I realized there was something that I wasn't seeing. I was locked in some pattern, and it was causing me a lot of suffering. And I found this work called core energetics. It's a somatic psychotherapy, and it uses different physical techniques like hitting, punching, kicking, and breath work to help feel your feelings, really. And the philosophy behind it, I was fascinated by. And then I found a teacher, this woman named Anne Bradney, went up to one of her week-long workshops at the Esalen Institute in Big Sur in 2006. I was 35 years old at the time. At the height of my success, I had a TV show. I had 2 movies coming out. I just did this, signed a big deal with Visa. I was the voice of Visa for a year. And I went to this workshop and just got my mind blown by this woman. I had a profound experience that changed my life, but it wasn't just that. It was what I saw. Everybody was just going there and raging and crying and feeling and confronting their fear. And this woman had a magic about her. And I had this feeling that I wanted to know what she knew and be able to do what she did. I don't know why. It was just a feeling that overcame me. I was fascinated. And then I joined her school 2 years later, graduated 4 years after that, went to Toronto to shoot a TV series, Cracked, which you mentioned in the intro. And while I was there, I opened up a studio and started doing groups and workshops. That was really my passion. I mean, I do a lot of one-on-one coaching, but my passion is really working with groups. And what happened is I built a pretty big community there very quickly. And people started coming up to me saying, you know, you're really good at this. I think this is what you're supposed to be doing. And that was the, you know, the beginning of the end of my acting career. But of course, I was identified as being an actor. That's how I made my money. There was a lot of ego gratification. You know, I was famous and it felt really good. So it was hard to give it up, and it took me some time. But eventually I just, you know, I followed my passion, I followed my calling, and now I'm here.
That's great. I love that. Somatic. I don't know if you heard Elliot Holtz talking about bioenergetics.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
The story of the ducks, right? That fight, that you get angry at each other and then they swim away from each other and they shake their feathers.
That's
You
right.
don't know that story?
I have heard that story now that you mention it. Yeah.
Yeah,
There's other
yeah.
stories like that, the gazelle being chased by the lion. And there's a famous video online of a polar bear just shaking. And that's really it. I mean, you know, this phrase, shake it off,
Yeah.
which can sound kind of dismissive, you know, when a coach says it to you and you're a kid and you're hurt. It's actually real. You can shake off your pain. And there's I forget, David Berceli's got a technique called trauma release or tension release exercises. It's very connected to bioenergetics. And just the idea is that the trauma, the pain, the fear, the anger, whatever it may be, it's trapped in the body. And the mind is always, as you talk about so perfectly, the mind is very tricky, and it's always going to try to rationalize and create excuses about why you don't want to feel your pain. And that's why we get locked in these patterns. So I thought that was great. You just go right to the source. And for me, the results were there. I'd done a lot of talk therapy before I started core energetics. And just by the way, core energetics evolved out of bioenergetics. Core energetics was started by a guy named John Parakis, and he had worked with Alexander Lowen for a long time. And he brought kind of more of traditional psychology to the work, but also a spiritual dimension. His wife, Ava Parakis, channeled these series of lectures called the Pathwork Lectures that is really the philosophical foundation of core energetics. And for me, it's one of the most underestimated, unknown bodies of wisdom out there. It's not easy to read at first. Once you get into it, you can start to you know, really understand it. But I don't know, it just resonated with me for whatever reason. And I couldn't feel, you know, in talk therapy. It was a lot of talk. I understood what I call like the math of my problems. Okay, this is what happened to me as a child, and these are the belief systems that came from that and some of the false conclusions, but I couldn't get out of my pattern. And I also knew as an actor, there were scenes that I was having trouble getting to some of the deep emotions. So I knew there was a block there. And this work allowed me to go right to the source of that block in my body and feel it, and bypass the mind, which wants to control, and just really lose control. I mean, that's how we healed. On some level, you have to be willing to lose control, whatever it is. If you want to change, you have to be willing to let go of the known, enter into the unknown, and you know, walk through that desert to find yourself anew. And that's a scary fucking thing. And this work just it's kind of like almost like ayahuasca. Like once you're in, you just got to go all the way through. You have to surrender to it. And I just took to it. I was fascinated by it. I was fascinated by how she was working with people's defenses and how tricky people's defenses are. Yeah. And how you have to, you know, affirm and massage, but then challenge and just, you know, lead them. And there's almost a magic to it. And I thought that at the time, this is 2006, remember, there was no Instagram, there was no TikTok, there was nobody like you out there explaining all these ideas. People weren't talking about mental health at all.
Right.
So I just thought, man, everybody's got to know this. Everybody's walking around with these unprocessed feelings in their body, and they're acting it out in unconscious ways and creating all kinds of suffering for themselves and other people, and they're not even aware of it. And so that was kind of my mission. I wanted to show this work, and not just that work, but these psychological concepts to the world. And I ended up making a documentary, I think it was a 10-part series on a week-long group therapy retreat. Sold a pilot version to HBO. It never got picked up. So I was out there, trying to make it happen. I really felt passionate about it. But right at the same time, people started putting stuff out there, and now it's everywhere, and it's amazing to see. It's part of the conversation. It's part of the consciousness. People understand these ideas, and it's just, 20 years later from when I first started, it's just amazing to see that it's gone mainstream, for better or for worse. But the information is out there, and people are really understanding, and I think that's a real positive evolution.
And you call it core energetics?
Core energetics. So like the core, like our core, like at our core, we are whole. Mm-hmm. At our core is our higher self. And so it the higher self, lower self, which people think about as the shadow. Core energetics has a slightly different description of that, or a way that it thinks about it. Higher self, lower self, mask. The mask would be the adapted self, the identity self. So you're working with those three energies. And obviously, we're trying to get to the higher self and really connect with that. But also knowing that eradicating the mask, the ego, and the lower self is not something that you can really do. This is how I see it. You just want to make it known and gain some kind of control over it. I mean, I think you teach about that really well. Not be a slave to it. If it's in the unconscious, it's running your life. But if you're willing to make it conscious, which is not an easy thing to do, because you have to, you have to be willing to confront the darker parts of yourself and maybe some negative intentions that you might have, and confront really, the places where you got really hurt as a child, and you have this belief that you don't want to feel it. And for a lot of us, certainly for me, I was not aware of it. I had no idea how impacted I was by my experiences in childhood till I started doing this work.
1 second. It's this camera goes off sometimes. These two ideas of surrender and control, or surrender and holding on, are spread out in the oldest teachings in the world. We hear it in the Bhagavad Gita, we hear it in the Tao Te Ching, we hear it nowadays with Michael Singer, Eckhart Tolle, and everybody has kind of different words for it. So I think people a lot of times get confused. I want to hear your opinion on what I'm going to say right now. When we talk about surrender, I feel like we're almost talking about letting go to the infinite intelligence that's in our body that knows how to process these things. We don't process these things, but it does. And how I explain it to my clients is like, when you eat a strawberry, you don't go in your stomach and you say, hey, stomach, today I'm going to make the decision where the strawberry goes. I'm going to put a little bit there, or put a little bit there, a little bit there. And the stomach's like, what the fuck are you talking about? I've been doing this for you for 20, 30, 40, 60, 70 years. You don't even know what an enzyme is. You don't even know what blood cells I want to put these things in. You don't know how I work together with the brain and all the other organs, how to do this. Like, we wouldn't get the idea to be like, hey, I'm going to go in there and fix this. The same way, but for some reason, people tend to try to go into their brain
Mm-hmm.
and try to start fixing the anxiety, trying to start judging the anxiety, trying to control their thoughts,
Mm-hmm.
which actually causes the mental health problems.
Right. Causes more anxiety.
Exactly. Because
Yeah.
we show, when I talk about the language of the language of the brain's behavior. If you keep engaging with anxiety, even if you keep trying to fix it, the brain doesn't understand, oh, let's clean up this anxiety so you be happy. The brain's like, hey, you seem to love fixing anxiety.
Yeah.
You love fixing this thing, anxiety. For you to continue to do the thing that you love, I need to give you more anxiety. So people get into this addiction of, oh, I have anxiety, let me fix it with TikTok. Or I
That's
have
right.
anxiety, let me fix it with a relationship. Or I have loneliness, let me fix it with a relationship. I feel like so challenging for people because once they let go, they have to be with the uncomfortable feeling,
Yeah.
which actually creates emotional fitness if they do it long enough and they get stronger and they get more focused. So, do you see it kind of in a similar way? The process of somatics to let the body process it? And sorry, I want an additional question because I always tell my clients how important athletics is and
Mm-hmm.
physical fitness. Don't you think? I have the theory that going swimming, going to the gym, doing these movements with our body, stretching, yoga, and all that is a form of a somatic experience and can help to process these things. Also, because we're taking our focus off as much as we can, those emotions and thoughts, that brain things, and put it on the action. And then the brain, like the digestion, can do its work. Do you feel it is around the same way?
Absolutely. I mean, I push physical fitness on my clients all the time. It's vital. I mean, you have to be in your body. You have to be fit. You have to be moving your body. I mean, somatic literally means like of the body. So we want to get out of our heads and into our bodies as much as we can. And we live in a culture we're locked in our heads, and we're slaves to rationality. And you cannot solve a problem of the mind with the mind. So I think about it like the body in some way you can work with it as the unconscious mind, and what it, like the mind wants to control,
Mm-hmm.
right? And control is really a defense, and control stops you from exactly what you said, the natural and spontaneous flow and
Mm-hmm.
intelligence of the body. And the example that I use is, if you get a cut, you don't do anything. You just, give it some air and it will heal on its own. Well, the body and the emotions must be able to do the same, right? Emotionally, we must be able to do the same. We just have to give ourselves the space to do it. And I think what's happened is people are very scared of their emotions. But if you think about grief, somebody dies or you experience some tragedy and you feel sad. Well, the way to release it is simply to let yourself cry. Like let your body shake and cry and let that energy release. You don't have to think about it, right? It'll just happen spontaneously. And in that place, you'll be able to let it go. And I think we have all kinds of ideas about what we're supposed to do and what we shouldn't do, ways we're supposed to show up. But that's what I loved about this work is I could enter into these rooms, enter into these groups, and the invitation was essentially don't hold back anything. Now, that's quite an invitation.
Mm-hmm.
Don't hold back anything. What does that even mean? I mean, don't hurt yourself, don't hurt the room, don't hurt other people physically, but otherwise you have permission to get it all out. And so what that requires of people in my workshops, they have to surrender their conscious mind. They have to let go. And I encourage them to follow your impulses, follow your instincts, see where they take you. And if you do that, and if you commit to them, and if you trust them, and you need a skilled facilitator, certainly, it will take you to healing. It can't not take you to healing. And at first, people are uncomfortable with it. But once they begin to get it, it's so logical. It just makes sense to them immediately. And that's how I felt. I'm like, why isn't everybody doing this? Like, this is important. Like, we have all these feelings locked in our bodies and we're repressing them, we're denying them, and it's creating all of this suffering, all of this anxiety, all of this fear, and we're acting it out all over the place. We're blaming other people, we're judging other people, we're putting it all outside there, but it's all in here. And once you understand that every problem you have can be solved internally, right? That the feelings that you have are really, they're your responsibility, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, something may happen to you, that you may be cheated on, you may be betrayed, your father left, or your mother abused you, and that's tragic. And you have a right to be angry about it, but staying stuck in that anger and blaming the other person, it doesn't really get you anywhere. So ultimately, it's like, those feelings that you're left with, they now belong to you, and they're yours to deal with. And what I try to teach people is that's the path to freedom. Because if you're blaming other people for how you feel, then you are a slave essentially to their behavior. And you can't control other people. You can't
Mm-hmm.
control the world. All you can control is you. Now, people can understand that concept. Okay, I get that. But what do I do with it, right? When you have feelings that you're afraid to feel, it can be it's scary. Like when I talk to people and I say to them, what would it be like for you to feel everything inside you? Most people, that terrifies them. Whether they're aware of what's going on inside them or not, they know on some level there's something inside them that scares them. The intensity, perhaps, of the rage, or the depth of their pain. And the problem with that is, if you have feelings inside you that you are avoiding, you are going to avoid anything in life that might bring up those feelings. Now, you're not going to do it consciously, but unconsciously, you're going to avoid all kinds of situations, right? Like relationships, or taking risks with your business, or putting yourself out there in social media. Like, what is the fear? Well, you're afraid to feel rejected or dismissed or unseen. And maybe to the child, those feelings felt, if they experienced that with their parents, felt overwhelming. But to the adult, like, you can feel those feelings,
Yeah.
you can tolerate people not understanding you. You can tolerate a betrayal. You can tolerate all of it if you're willing to say, I'm willing to feel everything. And when I say that, because I did a podcast with Zuby, and he said, well, isn't that the problem in society right now? Everybody's like feeling their feelings, and that's not, they're actually not.
That's being reactive to the feelings.
Yeah, they're being reactive to the feelings. And
it's doing behaviors to get rid of the feelings.
That's
exactly. Not actually doing the hard work of, like, being okay with the uncomfortable feelings.
Being okay with the uncomfortable feelings, facing them. And yes, exactly what you said, dealing with the discomfort. And there's really, all spiritual growth, psychological growth, you have to confront the discomfort. You have to be able to sit in the discomfort. And, one of the things that I'm on, like, the Red Road, so I do a lot of work with the Lakota. So what does that involve? Like sweat lodges, vision quests, Sundance, and all of them involve like a lot of discomfort.
Yeah.
And, you start to realize the brilliance, almost the technology of these ceremonies, because they force you into a situation where you can't get out. Like, you've got to deal with your feelings. And when there's no way out, you have to find a way to get through it. And what you realize is you can. And when you know that you can, I mean, think about how much more powerful you are in the world.
You trust yourself more.
Yeah. If you're not afraid to feel uncomfortable feelings, right? Like, you have tremendous power, and there's going to be a lot more opportunity for you, and you're going to follow your dreams. You're going to go after what you want. You're going to take more risks. And that's what we all want to do.
This idea, which you talked about, that people don't want to feel their feelings. Don't you think that a big part of that is that society is telling you that having certain feelings is wrong.
Yeah.
Like, especially nowadays, as soon as someone says, oh, I have anxiety, like, oh, you have ADHD, because now we can
Right.
give you pills to get money out of you. That's great. And by the way, if you lift your right thumb while you have ADHD, you have right thumb ADHD, which is different because I just want to have status and I just wanted to invent this. So I'm going to be in the history book as the guy who invented thumbs up ADHD. So people, like society literally is like, oh, we're supposed to have feelings. Like,
Yeah.
we're supposed to have feelings. But as soon, I hear it all the time. I hear the stories like when clients say like, hey, I was on the couch today for like a longer amount of time. Do you think I'm depressed? And it's like, no, I don't think you're depressed. Besides that, you're doing a lot of activities. But they're getting all these ideas from social media all the time. There's going to be a TikTok or an Instagrammer. If you do this behavior, you have this. If you have this feeling, you have this. And the problem is that minds like to chase the certainty of having a label.
Yes.
Like, if I have a label, at least I have a little bit certainty. But then the problem is it comes from certainty to fucking identity. They're like, okay, now I'm the person with ADHD. Mom, I cannot do the homework anymore. Forget about that. It's too hard. I have ADHD. Ask my doctor, who you pay $100, $200, whatever a month for me to get these pills. Plus, the doctor gets incentives from the pharma industry. Like, they get literally paid billions a year to push these pills out. So the kids, anybody, I hear it all the time when I make a video about ADHD and I say that you can actually train your focus and you can actually build the emotional fitness to not react to these behaviors. People are like, they call me an enabler, which actually is so weird because aren't the people who tell them they cannot do their dreams anymore because of they enable us to not do. But they hold on to this because it's their new identity. Because then they don't have to face their fears anymore, right? Then they don't actually have to go out and make a podcast because the endless excuse is, oh, I have ADHD. I couldn't done it. But at least I can now talk about ADHD thing. So what do you think about the state of society right now with all the mental health labels that are basically giving out like candy to people, kids getting all kinds of pharma, which is crazy. Is there, awareness, a podcast like this would be kind of the solution, but what do you want to say? I don't even have a question about this. What do you want to say about that?
No, I agree with you. It's sad. It's very sad. And I think people are being exploited. Maybe it's just out of ignorance, or maybe it's deeper than that. Maybe it's nefarious. I don't know, but whatever it is, it's not helpful. It's making it worse. And I agree with you. Putting labels on things is not helpful. That's what I like about Tate, when he talks about depression, when he says depression isn't real. Now that's a provocative statement to make, and he knows he's intentionally being provocative, but he backs it up. Like, why do you want to give it a label? Why do you want to label yourself like that? Because once you've told yourself you're depressed, now you're depressed.
Yeah,
and you're exactly right. It allows us to have some kind of feeling of understanding, but it also sometimes can prohibit us from taking action.
yeah.
Right? We can use it as an excuse. And I think there's a lot of enablers out there who are doing just that. So I think that's a huge problem. And I'm glad that you're speaking up about it, because it's not productive. And most of these problems, as far as I'm concerned, all my problems were solved when I learned how to feel my feelings, how I learned to build a container for myself so that when things happen to me, I could, I had a methodology, and it's practice. And you teach this well. You have to practice.
Yeah.
Right. It's a discipline, just like anything else. If you want to be good at soccer, you got to practice soccer. If you want to be good at like regulating your emotions and understanding your emotions and keep building a container to contain your emotions, it doesn't mean don't feel them. It just means don't react and project them out, like take responsibility for them. That's what we should be teaching people. And I mean, on the plus side, I would say that the fact that meditation has become so popular, I think is really good. So as much as there's a kind of like a real negative movement that I think is destructive with, pharma and the medical industrial complex, I think there's also a movement of people like you and I and many others who are teaching people the right way. And we're still learning. Like we don't know anything. We don't know everything. Like I think about this, Freud. I mean, obviously there's ancient wisdom that gets to all of it. I mean, it's all, you can argue that it's all in the Bible, really. But these psychological concepts and the concept of the unconscious, this is brand new, like mid 1800s. So we're still figuring all of this out. But I think we're really getting somewhere, and it's important. And maybe, this work has come about because the culture has really only recently come out of survival mode. I mean, for hundreds and thousands of years, people were just trying to survive. They didn't have time to think about how they were feeling. Right. But now that there's a lot of abundance in the world, and we're not there yet, but certainly in this country, most people can feed themselves and they have the things that they need. Well, now we can turn our attention to what's going on inside us. And in some way, I see that as the next area or the current area of deep exploration. So, back in the day, Columbus sailed across the ocean to explore. We went to the moon or wherever to explore. And now I feel like the new generation of explorers, they're going inside themselves and trying to understand themselves and feel themselves. And this is a new endeavor, and it's exciting and it's powerful and it's elevating our consciousness. Like we understand ourselves in such a deep way, and it's happening so quickly. And there must be some evolutionary force at work. That's what I think. There must be something, because there's so, like, why did I go from acting to becoming a therapist? Like, why are you doing what you do? Because in another era, you're a smart guy. You could probably do anything, but you got drawn to this. I got drawn to this. Lots of people are getting drawn to this. So there must be a need for it. There must be something that's happening beyond what we know that's driving something forward, because we are, you can see in the culture right now, we've hit the limit, right? I mean, things are crumbling, and you feel this conflict almost between the old world and the new, and what people might call the legacy institutions. And they feel, to me, insane and corrupt and desperate. Right. And it's easy, again, to attribute like nefarious intentions on them. But really, I think they just are caught in a certain level of consciousness. That's right. And there's another consciousness that's emerging. Yeah. And from where they're sitting, they can't make sense of it. They can't see it. So it seems nuts to them. But for us, I think, see it very clearly, and more people are seeing it. And so I think it's, I'm optimistic. I mean, things look crazy out there right now, but that's what any person has to go through. There has to be a death and rebirth. Like the ego has to die, and that's a painful experience. So it happens on an individual level, but it also happens on a cultural level. And I think we are literally in the middle right now as a culture. We are going through an ego death, and the ego is going to hang on, man. The ego, doesn't want to let go. And so it makes sense to me that we're in this predicament.
Eckhart Tolle said, the universe will always support you if you raise consciousness, if you basically support the universe, if you support positive expansion. And I do have a feeling that's why the people who talk about these things, like you and me, it has such a big radius. Like people love it and they wake up. So I think, I don't know if there's a good side or bad side, but I think we are raising consciousness all
Yes.
over. At the same time, yes, we're seeing absolute craziness that 10 years ago we would have laughed about. If you would ask me, like, how many genders are there? Why are we fighting about this?
Yeah.
Are we fighting about these things? Let everybody do what they want to do, leave the kids alone,
Right.
and but don't brainwash the kids. Let them
Yeah.
make their own choices. You can make your own choice, but don't hurt the kids. Like,
Yes.
that's to me, and I saw that also. You were talking about this. That's to me and that you can't even talk about it,
Yeah.
or they take your videos down.
Mm-hmm.
That's to me one of the rather hurtful things where information is actually hurting people. But also what we see is the people who have the most outcry are the loudest, right?
Yeah.
So I think actually the world is better than we think it is. It's
Agreed.
just the crazy people are so loud. Like their ego is so strong that they need to be seen. They need to lift their phone up and be like, listen to me. You need to accept me now because I don't accept myself, and I need to like chase validation by you giving me the validation. So, and then the funny part is, because it's so insane, and I don't want to like be derogatory, but like it's so insane, people react to it, and that reaction boosts the algorithm.
That's right.
So it's the fighting, and I always tell people, like, stop fighting with these people. Like, it doesn't make sense, and go in the direction that's more supportive. But people love the conflict, and they get pulled in by the conflict.
Yeah.
A question well, you talked about, Andrew Tate said, there's no depression, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we all know there is such a thing as depressed feelings, but I agree with him, there is no chronic depression. People
Right.
keep themselves in the state by continuously engaging and avoiding things that would be supportive to them to get out of the depression.
Yeah.
Now, he gave this, and by the way, to me, it doesn't even matter if they say, oh, no, we're right, and it's so detailed. Look at here at the description of what depression is. It matters to me what actually works.
That's right.
And he seems to have found something for him that worked. And he gave it twice on your pod. I think he'll give it on both podcasts. And I love that example, the example of the ghosts.
Hey, that's right.
When he said, think of two people. One believes in ghosts and like research ghosts all the time and like is so scared of them. And one just ghosts, what are you talking about? I don't believe in ghosts. And they both sleep in a haunted house. And at night in the haunted house, there's like a noise. And one of them who believes in depression or the ghosts jumps up and it's like, it's a ghost. And they call an exorcist. And they like go crazy and like they can't live there anymore. And they do all kind of erratic, they spent money on ghost whisperers or something like that. And the other person wakes up and they're like, the wind. And he goes back to sleep, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So a lot of times the over information that we get and the labeling is actually more hurtful than just simply saying, hey, this is a feeling and I'm going to continue go to the gym.
Yeah.
So
What?
go ahead.
Why I was going to say, I think Tate said something. The thing I took, I mean, he said a lot of things that were really interesting to me, and I learned a lot from his perspective. He said, I don't believe in anything that takes away my power.
Oh my God. If that's not one of the most powerful sentences I heard,
Yeah.
Amazing.
And, Jordan Peterson has a similar phrase, something like, don't think thoughts that diminish your power, right? Like just don't indulge in that. If it makes you feel bad, if it makes you feel less powerful, don't indulge in it. And the way that I would say it is your natural state, your higher self. You are divine. You are a powerful being. So if you have a thought that makes you feel contracted or small or shameful, that thought is a lie. It's actually not a true thought. And that's what I try to say to my clients. It's just the voice of fear. And the voice of fear is, if, you know, when somebody's in a terrorized state, they will say anything, they will do anything, they will lie, they will cheat, they will steal. It doesn't matter. And we all have that voice inside our head.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember, like, there was a time when it was like a vision quest where I had to, you know, it's 4 days, 4 nights alone in the woods, no food, no water. And the second night I was just, I got overtaken by this fear. And I knew I was going out there to confront some unresolved fear that I had. That's precisely the reason that I went. And I ended up having this conversation all night long. I finally got a hold of it. And I realized the fear that I was experiencing was just like a young part of me, that I was scared a lot when I was a child. My dad wasn't around. My mom was kind of erratic. There was no safety. And that part of me never got seen or understood, or it never got space to feel or express itself. So when things would happen, and when I would be in a place of uncertainty, like shifting my career, and there's, you know, all this unknown, that part of me would come on, and I'd start having a lot of really intense negative thinking. And what I did through that night was just, I had a conversation with, it was like my higher self, or maybe you call it the adult self, talking to this scared child. And I realized there was a rational part of me, an adult part of me, a wise part of me that could always find a way to talk to that fear.
Mm.
And that if I talk to it gently, if I, you know, said, I understand how you're feeling. I get it. It makes sense. I understand why you don't want to go do this thing. You're afraid you're going to get hurt, but we're going to go anyway. I'm going to be there with you, and, you know, it's okay. Like, we're going to be okay. And that changed everything for me. Like I had this voice in my head that sometimes would take over. And we all know this is negative self-talk, and I couldn't get out of it. And when I found my way out of it and found a way to deal with it, and now whenever it comes up, it's exactly what I do. I go, okay, that's my scared child. That's not me. I'm in my history. I'm not actually in reality right now, because there's nothing to be afraid of. Everything's fine. Everything always works out for me somehow, some way. Things just kind of naturally work out. And and if I really look at my life, I can trust that. And I think that's true of most people. Then if I know I'm not in reality, then it's like, come back to reality, come back to presence, come back to this moment, and you'll see that there's nothing to be afraid of. Now, that's not an easy thing to do. It takes, you have to, you know, practice, as you've been talking about, we've been talking about. You've got to do the work, and it's hard work, right? And you got to stay on top of it, and it's got to be a daily thing, because the mind is a tricky thing, and it'll always come back, and it's easy to forget. And so I always say it's a practice of remembering. You know, the Muslims pray 5 times a day. 5 times a day, they get down on their knees and pray. Why are they doing that? To remember the truth about God, right? Because it's so easy to forget. Like, you go out into the world and you see all the social media, and there's all this negativity, and you're watching commercials, and you feel like, you know, you flip on Instagram and you feel like you're not enough and you need to make more money, whatever it is. And those thoughts of doubt creep in, and that's the ego. And so we have to have a practice of remembering, coming back to the truth of who we actually are, and that there's a discipline involved in that. Just like you got to work out every day if you want a strong body, you got to meditate, or whatever practice you have, you better be doing it every day, right, to keep that muscle strong. Because, you know, in sort of religious terms, you know, the devil is always waiting right around the corner, and the devil shows up in all kinds of tricky ways, and it's always waiting to get you. So you have to be vigilant. You know, you have to be disciplined. You have to be firm, or it's easy to get pulled back into the matrix, back into the Maya.
That's right. I love what you said about the higher self talking to the ego, so to say, because a lot of people are identifying with the ego, and they think the ego is them. What I teach my clients a lot is do cognitive diffusion, which is the differentiation between you and your brain. Instead of saying my thoughts, my feelings, say the brain says, or the thoughts say. Or when I work with children, sometimes we say, hey, do you want to call your brain SpongeBob or Mickey Mouse? And then they say, oh yeah, Mickey Mouse told me to not go to the playground to play with the kids, but I went anyway. And so they learn like the differentiation.
Yes.
So what I always tell my clients is, you thought that you are the child that's screaming, and the child got hurt in childhood somewhere. It might have been abandoned. It might have been betrayed. And now it's screaming constantly in your ear, no, no, don't do this thing. Don't do the podcast. You're going to get judged. You're going to get bullied again. Don't, no, 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 no. And then if you say, okay, I don't do this podcast because I'm scared, the child is like, what? I'm the child. I'm scared. And you're the adult? And you are scared? Now I'm even more scared. I'm freaking out even more because you're supposed to show me that I'm not supposed to be scared. And I tell them they're supposed to take them by, be okay with the uncomfortable feeling, which is the same language of be with your feelings, accept your feelings, be okay with those feelings, and take that little child, do the podcast anyway. Feeling not good enough, having the thoughts of not being good enough, feeling not ready yet, having the thoughts of not being ready yet, all of those things are just patterns. There's a great bumper sticker that I once say, don't believe all your thoughts.
Yeah.
So I love this correlation. And it's really about, can we be our own coach? Mm-hmm. Can we coach ourselves to be like, yeah, I can have this feeling. I can have this thought. I'm going to do my podcast. I'm going to start my business anyway. And I see this all the time. If you have something to chime in, please. But I wanted to ask you actually about self-help addiction. But if you want to bring something to this, let me know.
Well, I guess, I'm curious because I don't know much about your story, and I know this is your audience; they probably know you, but I'm curious. Like, how did you get into all this? Like, how did you acquire this wisdom?
I used to have really, 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 really strong OCD.
Oh, really?
So there were times where I couldn't like really live my life in a sense during the day because of compulsions. And
Wow.
that probably comes from my childhood was very, very unsure, like very similar to what you said. It was out of control. It happened through a very challenging situation to my mom, and then things went out of control. I came to this place, I came to that place, I came to this place. And then I was bullied for 7 years in school, every day. For 7 years, my dad didn't believe, because he grew up in a different time where the city wasn't the way it was when I grew up. It was actually I was born in Germany. It was the most criminal city in Germany at that time, and that school wasn't a really good school. So I stayed in that school, and later on, instead of people develop drug addiction, people develop whatever compulsions you start doing, right? Drug addictions, addiction, sex addictions, whatever. And I developed OCD. And then I practically learned how to change my brain. And it was very, very hard work for years and years and years. But I did it. And because I practiced years and years and years, instead of going to school, to university, to regurgitate information that I learned, but I don't actually know how. It's like a basketball coach who read every book about basketball, went to every lecture about basketball, but they never played basketball. Or a fitness coach who never deadlifted or squatted. How good are they going to be a coach? And a lot of the therapists that I see, like, they actually have no idea how the brain works. And the reason why I'm able to communicate this so easily is because I went through it very, very harshly. And the compulsions are connected. So someone with OCD, everybody has OCD, by the way, if you think about it.
Yeah.
It's just at a certain degree you get diagnosed. But someone who has jealousy coming up in their body and is trying to make the jealousy feel better by grabbing the phone and checking if their boyfriend or girlfriend is cheating on them is doing a compulsion, which means they are having OCD, so to say, in that moment. Yeah. So when I talk to my clients about relationships, anything, thoughts, intrusive thoughts, it's very easy for me to see what are the compulsions, how can we focus on something else, what are the practical actions, how do we change our brain, how do we develop emotional fitness and mental focus, because I went through it. And I think exactly like you did, you had to work with your higher self, you went through this crazy transformation. You can only help people so well because we went through it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's probably why you speak to it so well. It's clear that yeah, you did go through something. I mean, you healed yourself, it sounds like. And you're very aware of how you did it. And I'm sure that wasn't an easy process. And so it sounds like, yeah, now you're teaching other people to do the same.
Yeah. So now we actually had a very interesting segment. If we want to, I asked you because you did this for Andrew Tate, to the psychoanalyzing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like the word. I would rather say you working with me.
Yeah.
Or it sounds, I don't know. The psychoanalyzing sounds so like now I'm going to judge and analyze. I'm going to find out.
Right, right,
But I
right.
think that's not even what you mean. It's just sounds. It's a great word to use for people to understand what's
Yeah.
going on.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm open to it. The if whatever you just to show the audience your work
Sure.
and what you're
Okay. Yeah.
doing. I know we probably can't do. I'm willing to do somatic things here. If there's any somatic things or shaking or anything, I'm totally fine with
Wow.
doing
Okay.
that. I just would like to give the audience like some value, and I think it's vulnerable because everybody can like we can talk about these things a lot, but
Yeah.
I think it's beautiful like to see something like a work. It's almost like being like a fly in the corner to be like, oh, I see this guy being now worked on, and I see it being. I use clips sometimes because my clients give me the permission often to recordings that I use with
Yeah.
them to put on social media, and I did this from the beginning. Someone like, yeah, totally fine, da, da, da. And I see how helpful that is for a lot of people to see that they're not the only ones out there. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
You had somebody help you? You went to therapy, or what was your
Yeah.
process?
ACT.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
acceptance and commitment therapy,
Mm-hmm.
and exposure and response prevention therapy, and yeah, then I practiced meditation, all of those kind of things. Yeah. That's
Wow.
only one area, by the way, that I've done just in the OCD world or cutting out compulsions, but I've been going to Abraham Hicks workshops for the longest. You and me, I saw you follow Bashar. I've been on Bashar workshops.
I saw you on Bashar, man. I saw
Yeah.
you pop up in one of the clips.
Since I'm young, I had this urge to like, I always wanted to be the best. I wanted to be
Oh,
the best in the beginning, I feel like, because then I feel like I would be loved, right?
right. Right.
So that's, I'm still ambitious. Uh,
Yeah.
I just don't care so much about like the loving. Everybody wants to be loved, but like I wanted to so be loved because my mom couldn't be there at a time. It's not even like her fault, but she couldn't like. So I was like, oh, I got to be the best because then maybe my mom loves me or other people love me or.
Right.
And then I realized it when it didn't work. Her loving me or like other. I mean, she loves me, but it's just complicated. But then I was just like, okay, let me just go out there and maybe other people like love me.
Mm-hmm.
And I worked on that, and now like I don't need that anymore. But that's how. I don't even know what the question was. Sorry.
No, it's okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're just talking. I was asking like what your, what the
Oh
work
yeah,
you did.
the act therapy. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Um, well, so that's interesting because now you are loved. You have a lot of, I mean, fans and people that look up to you and admire you. And I guess if you started out with, I mean, it must have been painful. It sounds like, I mean, I don't know what the details were, but your mother wasn't there for you in the way that you needed. And, the child can often interpret some form of absent mother, they take it personally. What else can they do? There must be something wrong with me, and so I'm going to compensate in some way to try to win my mother's love. That's why I became an actor. I mean, I didn't realize that at the time, but I was really trying to win my mother's love. I was trying to make her proud of me, and that's one of the reasons that I got out of it. You know, Marlon Brando said, you know, the impulse to become an actor, it's an erotic impulse, and quitting acting is a sign of growing up. And so I'm kind of
We're
clung
very
to
similar.
that.
Did you know I started? I do acting too.
I was going to
You
ask
didn't
you,
know?
man, you seem like a natural.
No, but maybe I don't know. But from I got a scholarship from the Steppenwolf Company. I don't know if you know them. They're in,
In
like, in Chicago
Chicago?
with Jeff Perry
Of course.
back in the day. And the Stella Adler. I worked 2 years. I was with Stella Adler. I enjoyed Steppenwolf more, but and then after I did music, rapping, music videos, but also worked on sets, extras, and all that stuff. But never really had a breakthrough because the directors back then always said, "Oh, we cannot do it because you have an accent."
Right.
You have an accent,
Yeah.
which was hurtful. But I found a way to express myself anyway on social media and like had success with it.
Do you consider yourself like an artist in a way?
Yes, I think my heart is more in art. That's why I also like doing the alien videos. And I don't know if you've seen like the
Yeah.
two people talking videos. Yeah, I love those things.
Yeah, they're very, very creative.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Yeah. So how is it now you have, because it's a thing. I remember when I was an actor and I got famous, and you know, I'm walking around airports and people are recognizing me, and I'm sure that must happen to you. How is that, you know, to receive this adoration, and like, are you able to receive it? Like, what happens for you?
So I got popular, so to say famous in 2020. I blew up on TikTok.
Mm-hmm.
And in the beginning, it was so exciting, but you saw it like on the internet. But also because I live in LA, I get recognized more often in a big city. So when I go like
Yeah.
to mall things. But in the beginning, because it's 2020, I was still outside, by the way. I never stayed at home. I said, fuck this. I'm not like doing this staying at home stuff. I went to the beach every day and made videos. And then blew up by making more and more videos. And then suddenly these letters came like, I love you. You helped me so much. You changed my life. And it was more and more. But my head, I couldn't like, because it was writing, I couldn't get it. I didn't really get it that much. But it went more and more and more over the years. And on some point, something opened in me where I was like, oh, there are nice people out there.
Uh-huh.
Because I feel like I was bullied for 7 years. So I had a little bit of you know when a dog gets beaten for that long
Yeah,
time, they're like
yeah.
humans. So to me, it was like I think I always had this a little bit.
Defense.
Then I was like, oh,
Protection.
there's people out there who have a good heart. They're
Yeah.
nice people.
Yeah.
So then I was even more excited to make videos that help people who have good hearts, because before that I was just like hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then being recognized, but I don't think it does any, like it's nice. I love the appreciation. I think mostly I love the resonance. I love that something I do, something I create resonates so much and brings happiness and emotions in people.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, the snapping. But but it's not so much that I'm like, I don't need, like, I made my opinion up about myself.
You did.
Yeah, it's done. Like I made my opinion up. It's
And
like,
what is
there was
that?
this
What is
author
that
once. She was
opinion?
like a girl. She said, the critics were like, oh, are you worried what the critics? No, the interview said, are you worried what the critics said about your book? And she said, no, I already made my mind up about how good or bad the book is.
Right.
So I don't really like when someone says some positive or negative. Like I love it. I take the appreciation, but it's not going to change anything about how I see myself.
I
you
see.
know?
Yeah.
But it would probably, if I would have been younger, getting famous where I wasn't, going through all the work, doing all the work, it would have probably affected me where I would maybe get a big head and
Yeah.
like do kinds of crazy things like Justin Bieber or Britney Spears, you know?
Well, the interesting thing about you, from my perspective, is that, traditionally we see people talking about these concepts in a very buttoned down way, in a very professional way. And you're kind of a wild man. You
Probably, yeah.
have a big personality, you have a sense of humor, and I think there's something about the lightness that you bring to it that makes it really accessible for a lot of people. I mean, it's clear to me you take your work very seriously, but you don't take yourself that seriously. And I think it allows people in. And I guess, was there any moment where did you worry like about trying to fit into a box, or were you just like, I'm going for it, this is who I am, I'm going to show the world who I am? Because it just seems like you are totally yourself.
Yeah, I think with being by myself for such a long time and with being bullied for such a long, like when I got bullied every day for
Yeah,
7 years.
how was that? That sounds,
So
must have been
the good thing
terrifying.
about that is that on some point I said, okay, like no one accepts me anyway. Fuck
Right,
everyone.
right.
And I became this person that almost out of being pressed up against the wall and having nothing to lose. Basically,
Yeah,
everything came from nothing to lose. And then I always want to be the best. So when I was at Steppenwolf in the improv with 24 other people from all over the world that got like recruited like for the scholarship, I just wanted to jump on stage first in the improv craziness from the theater kids and like it's just this. And then when I made videos, I was like, yeah, I could hold back. I could probably get more girls if I don't make the alien videos. And because it seems to some people cringy and some people say it's cringy, like, why are you doing this? But they don't pay my rent.
right.
And I'm getting more followers. I'm expressing myself. And if I don't express myself, something is like dying.
Yeah,
So I think it's more the positive is that I went through so much pain that I can now just go outside on the street because I make a lot of videos outside on the street with a lot of people, and I don't care.
yeah, it's amazing.
I still care. I think people want to honest. I still might care like a little, like there might be anxiety coming up, but I
Uh-huh.
do it anyway. I used to drive Uber and Lyft before, right? I came with 2 bags. I didn't have anything like to the United States, to LA. I used to drive Uber and Lyft, but I was like, I'm not going to drive Uber and Lyft forever. And so in the cars, I would start making TikToks. And the first TikToks actually that blew up were crazy TikToks I would do. Like I would just follow my excitement, film random things, but then also film videos in the car with girls and guys. And before that, yeah, there was like, oh, you want to do this again? There's anxiety and stranger. And I always ask myself this one question: what happens if you don't do this?
Mm,
Nothing.
right.
Absolutely nothing. You just stay Uber driver. So I just had the anxiety and I trained myself like this and did those things, if that makes sense.
That makes sense. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
really powerful. That's a powerful story. I don't know, for some reason I feel um yeah, it's nice to hear a little bit about your story and the pain that you went through, because being bullied, I mean, it's not just that you were bullied for 7 years, which is a long time. It to have to go to school every day, and I assume that you felt afraid a lot of the time.
Afraid, yeah, and outcasted and
Right.
always on edge
Yeah,
because I
couldn't
never knew when it
relax.
would come.
That's trauma. That's like, it's like you're terrorized in that way.
Yeah. Funny thing is, at the end, just before high school ended for us, I went to a different school just at the end because I was so like, I'm not going to the school anymore. Or I think I got kicked out. I don't know, remember. But I went to the new school and they weren't like that. But in front of the class, when I did a presentation, right, I would do my first presentation in the new school in front of the class. And I just had a white shirt on. I'm really good at faking it. So I did the presentation but I was sweating, I was heating up. There was so much fear in me, the same fear there was like for, even though those, my schoolmates there was nice to me.
Yeah.
And I was sitting down after the presentation next to a girl, and she was like, "Oh, you did so great." And I was like, "Oh, thank you. I was so like nervous." And she was like, "Oh, I didn't even realize you seemed like so confident." But because I can just like be calm
Yeah.
and just still have
Yeah.
it underneath me. Yeah. So it was
That's
just always on
interesting.
edge, if that makes
It's
sense.
is it still that way? Do you still wrestle with fear and anxiety?
No, I don't have any anxiety. Well, no, I think everybody has anxiety.
Yeah.
Everybody has anxiety.
Well, I mean, if we're constantly growing and challenging ourselves, we should be experiencing fear. I mean, that's a natural
That's
part of
right.
life.
Yeah. I do have, but I don't have like it constantly because I don't, because, okay, I might have anxiety doing this podcast or doing something coming up, but then I focus mindfully on, oh, giving value, trying to do my best.
Hmm.
Like I'm always, I don't, because I know where this is going to lead. I never engage in the thoughts. I'm coming back. I feel like my focus, our attention is the biggest power we have.
Yes.
So think of it like a flashlight. Like I don't leave it on those thoughts. I bring it back to, okay, what can I do to make this good?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I can see why you'd respond to Tate because he's got a similar outlook, you
It's
know.
it's so funny. I feel like he's like, I have a brother, but the way he talk, it's how we grew up. Like we grew up like that. We grew up with loyalty. We grew up if, yeah, it doesn't matter if you're scared, you got to do it.
Yeah.
We grew up the same way. That's why I resonate with that so much. And it's like simplified. He also simplified it for hundreds of thousands of young men to
Yeah.
be like, you don't have to be reactive to your emotions.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate him for that so much.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you got to talk to him.
Yeah, I got to talk to him. He's a really interesting guy, and he gave me, a lot of openings. Obviously, people watch the interview and they have a lot of different feelings about it. And I read the comments, and people are like, oh, he's so defended, or he's in denial about this or about that. And maybe that's true, but it's working for him. And but the truth is, he gave me a lot of openings, and he listened to what I had to say. He took it in, and I appreciate it. I thought, like, if that was a first session, it was a therapy session, you're working
Yeah,
with somebody, I
definitely.
was like, that's a fucking killer session. This guy's
Yeah.
awesome, and he's totally open to doing the work, and
Because
that's
he
the
was like,
feeling that I had.
I'm willing to be present right now. I'm willing to try this, which is
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, and he was humble, and he's like, I'm being as vulnerable as I can be, and
Yeah.
and he said, if I'm shielding, I don't mean to, which is really a confession that he is shielding. But we all shield, and especially in that situation where I'm asking him to venture into some territory inside himself that he hasn't necessarily explored. And he was willing, like he was open,
Yeah.
and he learned something about himself, and I thought that was remarkable. You know, so yeah, I was actually quite touched by him. And when I look at him, I got 20 years on him, and I've been around, I've been famous, I've been in Hollywood. So, I've met movie stars, worked with movie stars. So, I've been around powerful people, famous people. So that I also had that going into the interview. Like I wasn't going to be intimidated by him. So I don't know, the softness that he showed me, and all I can see when I look at him is just this guy who's got such a big heart and all this love to
That's
give.
right. That's exactly what I see.
Yeah.
That's,
Yeah.
I mean, if you really, yeah, that's exactly what I see. The way he treats people, you have to just look at the actions, the
Hmm.
way with respect. Like, if you can look deeper, like, what a big heart he has.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you also have to understand how threatening it is because not everybody in the world is good looking at him. So if he opens up everything in the interview, he also has a lot of things to lose. He has a huge
That's right.
empire. He takes care of a lot of people.
Yeah,
So to him, it's probably why would I? To me, it's also like people at that status, they also have to have a certain amount of self-protection.
that's
You don't
right.
want to be vulnerable for everyone, so everyone learns. But like my family needs me, my brother needs me. I need to keep this business going here. Why
Yeah,
should I like be so vulnerable? Because a lot of vulnerability will be used as weakness by many,
that's
many
right.
people out there, by the people with low consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
So to
Mm-hmm.
me, it's, why would I do this if it's going to hurt my business? Just to
Exactly.
like, so we also have to take care of ourselves. So
Yeah,
if
and
he
I
did it, I totally be on like, yeah. And I don't agree. I'm not a Muslim. I didn't convert to being a Muslim because he converted to being a Muslim. I still think for myself, I take the things that I resonate with, but I leave the things that I don't, and I disagree with a few things like that.
sure.
I wouldn't smoke cigars, other things like, but that's his thing, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And that's everybody can do what like it's not bad like smoke your cigars, but there's a lot of people who want to one, then try to take everything that a person has.
mm-hmm.
And I don't think that's ever good because you're giving authority to someone else,
Yeah, that's
even though
right.
you have the power in yourself, the authority in yourself.
Yeah, I mean that's how I saw it. And I didn't say this explicitly, but oftentimes, when people come to therapy or they're going to do some transformational work, they feel like they have to give something up, and in some sense they do. But all of the tools that we require, um, or the tools that we develop in response to the trauma, because that's what happens. We adapt. We have strategies to adapt to the situations that we were in, and that's what happened for you. You had a situation. It was painful. It was scary, and because of that, you adapted and became this person. We don't like to think about it, but in some sense, the pain made you who you are.
That's right.
And without that experience, you probably wouldn't be here delivering this message in the way that you are. You wouldn't have learned everything you had to learn. So there is a gift in it, and that's a perspective that I think Tate has, and I respected it, and it's something that I definitely try to teach my clients because we don't want to stay attached to it. We don't want to stay attached to the resentment of the story. That said, we do need to confront it. I think we want to look at it because sometimes if as we talked about earlier, if you deny it or you rationalize it, then you are subject to some kind of cognitive distortions or some bad actions, right? Like it's really important to get in touch with what happened to you. I mean, your story is very touching to me, and I can really feel as I'm talking to you, like how painful that must have been, and particularly, and I don't know if how that felt. You said your dad didn't believe you. That's almost a betrayal in some way.
Ye-
Like,
Yeah.
did you
But
have
I
feelings
mean,
about that? Were you angry with him? Like, isn't your dad supposed to protect you and have your back?
he feels guilty about that. We talk a bunch of times about it, but
You
also,
have?
yeah, yeah. Even like 2 days ago, I think 2 days ago, he's like, and I was like, you don't have to like. We talked about this. It's all good now. Look at me. I'm famous. Look at me, Dad.
Is he
Look, all
proud of
these
you? He
people all over
must
the
be.
country, so I can do seminars. What do you want? We're good. We're good. We're good. And he's a loving. I love my dad. We have good conversations. Again, he grew so much. His consciousness raised, like my consciousness raised.
Right.
He used to believe a lot of things brought by the media back in the day. He questions things. I think I'm also a good influence on my family because I'm very intense. But my brother is very smart too. It's just there's a lot of things that happened. Both of my grandpas were in World War II.
Right.
They were 5 years, both of them captured in Russia. And
Wow.
yeah, both of them were captured. One of my grandpas had grenade splitters still in his ass.
Wow.
And my grandma was like, "Look, he still had the good." So I think he told me a story. He lost his whole like battalion, and he was the only one like surviving once from like jumping from a train or something. So to me, it's like sometimes, hey, get yourself together. Like,
Right, right,
they.
right.
But then again, we still have to have compassion for us. But the way one of my raised my mom, it was tough, very tough, right?
Hmm.
Because he just came out of war and like build up his. He had a farm that he built up one by one. He sold his moped, like his bike, to get like one more piece and work more to get one more piece and work more to get
Wow.
one more piece and work. And he built everything up. But the way he was very tough, he was so tough. And I don't always, I mean, everybody does their best, and I don't.
Yeah.
My mom had also the most hurtful thing happen to her that could happen to any person in the world. My brother died. He was 4.5.
Wow.
And he drowned in a swimming pool right at my grandmother's house. And and I was born, actually, I never met him. I was born a year later. But then, and I cannot say, I want to say now what after happened to my mom, because maybe one day, like, open up, because that's my mom. I want to, like, be
Of course.
respectful. But it wasn't easy for any one of us. And but like to lose your 4.5-year-old son, right? Because he tried to get the Smarties, the M&Ms in the pool, and she went inside for a little bit to like open some mail. I mean, that makes me like I tell my dad sometimes, and he doesn't want to hear it, but I'm like, if I could die now and give him like 20 more 4 years, I would do it right away. But this doesn't work like that. And maybe I'm him, like sometimes I think,
Right.
but in some crazy way. But the pain that she felt, like I have compassion with
Yes.
the way I was, with the way. And then 1 year later, I was born into pain. Like I was literally
Yeah.
carried in pain, in tremendous pain. I don't want to say the
Wow.
stories because that's maybe one day I open up or something like that. But the stories that my mom went through, it's not something. If I don't talk about it on a podcast, it's enough for people to know that it's
I
pretty
understand.
harsh. So then, I'm not blaming anyone, and
Yeah.
I know I'm like it. It affects me. It affected me, but yeah, it traumatized probably. But what am I supposed to do? It's
Right.
like they went through so much pain,
Yeah.
and yeah, I rather had a different relationship, but that's how it is. And I'm not looking back and be like, oh, I don't know, I wish it was different, or like I'm not bothered about it. I'm just like trying
Hmm.
to move forward, and that's it. I actually never talk about the past. Funny. I actually don't believe in psychotherapy. I
I
don't
know. I've heard you
believe.
say
Here's the
that.
thing. I
Yeah.
think there's good things in finding things and then
Uh-huh.
practically like working on it. But I have many clients who went to psychotherapy with people, and they got more. They say they got depression now. They got more messed up because they're constantly engaging with the same stories without any practical tools. And I truly believe that you give practical tools, but which you do with the somatic. But there's many therapists who don't. So to me, yes, maybe there's something that I still need to understand or something, but I'm trying to do my best, and if I figure out, I figure it out. If not, I'm gonna do the next podcast. I'm gonna try to express my, you know what I'm like.
Yeah, well, you're doing great. I mean,
Yeah,
it sounds like you're living your life and you're free and you're getting all the things that you want. So, and I agree with you. I mean, I think that's I talk about that with there's a woman that I work with, that I do workshops with, and we talk about that all the time, that the blind spot of therapy is like continuing to return to the past. Like there's value in going back to the past. It's essentially to process the feelings the child couldn't feel and to release them and let them go. But after that, it's like, okay, you have to take action. You have to do something different. Like, or you're just going to stay stuck in that story. And, I have conversations with my clients all the time. It's like, okay, we've covered this. Like, we don't
That's
need to
right.
talk about this anymore. It's like, and, we want to talk about the feelings, and because the story is the story. And we can't even be certain that we remember the story correctly.
That's right.
Like so it's spending too much
The
time on
brain
the
changes
details
things, right?
the brain changes
It's been
things, right?
shown in so many studies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All I'm concerned about when I'm working with people is what feelings are they repressing, and that's it. And
So how am I doing, David?
you're doing great, man. Well, you I mean, you are an inspiration.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
Well, how does that? It's interesting. Well, this is the edge, I feel, right? Like, I'll get you. I'm going to give you my. Well, I don't know, but I can imagine that if you grew up.
Boost me up, David.
Well, I'm not. I'm
No,
just
I'm
telling
joking.
you
I'm
what I
joking.
feel. But it's like if you grew up bullied and had feelings of like self-worth, like you weren't sure that you were lovable in some way, and you felt like an outcast. I can imagine like that becomes embedded in our consciousness in some way, and then you overcame that, and then now you become this successful person and who's doing legitimately good things in the world, like and at a high level, at a very, very high level for such a young man. Like you have a lot of wisdom, and so I can imagine that, like, that the new reality of being this powerful man with all this wisdom and all these people watching you and learning from you, and the old self of I'm not good enough, I'm an outcast, I'm unlovable. Like, I wonder if they ever kind of come into conflict a little bit, or that old part of you maybe prevents you from really receiving fully how powerful and good you really are. Does that make sense?
It does. I That's why I was so excited to talk to you, because you have a very good heart and you care about people and you want well. I love talking to people who want well for me. And because I want well for people, for good people. So you saying those things that I'm an inspiration, like, and those nice bigger words, that these powerful, like, I felt touched.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, there's a part of me who's like, yeah, everybody can say that. You
Yes,
know, like,
you don't trust it. To just feel. Oh, hold on, slow down. You
go
don't
ahead.
trust it. You don't trust it.
I don't trust it. That's why. But
Yeah,
I
you
don't
don't
need to
trust it.
trust it. That's the funny, like, I don't
Well,
even
but
ask for trust for it. I'm just like, keep going.
okay,
Yeah.
but just let's just mark this, because this is interesting, right? There's some way I said something,
Yeah.
right? And there's some place inside you, even though consciously you're like, this is a good guy, there's some way that you don't entirely trust it. And that's okay. I'm not asking you to
I
trust it.
trust it, but maybe you made it like a little bit bigger to make me feel a little bit better. You know what I mean? I
Is
trust
it
that you mean
what
that.
did I say? What do you think that I said that would, like, is like bigger? But I wasn't saying anything. Like, you came out of this incredibly painful
But
situation, bad OCD, you experienced a lot of trauma, and then you did all of this hard work. And I know you're an intense guy, and you're a smart guy, and you figured it out. And now, listen, I'm going to tell you something.
mhm.
I'm a snob, right? I think most of the people on TikTok and Instagram, like, they're full of shit, and I'm generally pretty critical of them. But not you. Like, I'm like, this guy's the real deal. I'm learning shit from him. I'm like, fuck, that's true. Like, when you talk about therapists and you're calling bullshit on them, like, that's a good fucking point. Like, I'm learning things from you. I watch your videos to learn. And I can imagine, you are an inspiration to a lot of people. You're an inspiration to me. I'm not just saying that. And you must be an inspiration to your family. Like all of that shit happened to you. And also, growing up, your grandparents, in the war in Germany, all of that trauma, all the collective trauma that happened there, and everybody's living with that. And here you are, like doing good in the world. I mean, I think what I'm saying is like, and I know this is somebody who's been famous. It's really important for you to take that in and to receive it because it's true. It's not the ego, it's reality, it's higher self. You're a powerful man.
I, yeah.
You know what I'm
I
talking
definitely
about? Do you know what
feel
I'm talking
more,
about?
huh?
Do you know what I'm talking about?
What I feel is yeah, I do. But I think part of me is I'm not trying to think about any concepts.
I understand.
Like, I'm not trying to think about me being like, this kind of person. Am I good enough? Am I not good enough? I'm just moving forward because these can also be concepts that I like engage with. But with that being said, you are very authentic yourself, and that's also very vulnerable. And it's hard for people to come close to me. And just you being you, just now, I felt like closer, if that makes sense. I don't know what it is.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. I felt a more of an opening between
Yeah.
us.
Yeah.
Almost like if this is like a meter of us like knowing of friendship meter, it went like close, like higher a little,
Yeah. Yeah.
just from you sharing that. Yeah. But then I still
Yeah.
don't trust it.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. I mean, that's what I'm always trying to do with all my clients and with myself. It's just be where you're at. Like when I started dating my current fiance, like early
Mhm.
on in the relationship, I said, I need to tell you something. I don't trust women.
Oh,
And I was saying it like you need to know this about me. I'm not making it right or wrong. It just is. And if my mother was, left my father, left my stepfather, and that's what I know. And so my experience of women is that they betray men. So it's hard for me to trust women, and that's where I'm at with it. And I said it so that it was present in the relationship, so that when things came up, that she would be aware that maybe I have this place inside me that's always looking and suspicious and is not letting her close, that for
mhm.
her to not take it personally, that this is my shit. And I had to do a lot of work to really let her in, and finally I'm like, I do trust her mostly. You know what I mean? There's
Yeah.
still that old part of me that's every once in a while is like, is she fucking, and I have to keep an eye on it, because in that place I know I'm not in reality, I'm in my history. And any place where we've been really hurt, and we're defended, like we're going to protect ourselves. And so I can imagine if you were bullied for all those years, there must be places where it's like it would be hard to trust or to let people in,
Yeah.
and let them get really close,
Maybe I'm trying
because
to
they
like
can hurt you
block
again.
connections or so. But like, how do you say, almost, what's the word I'm looking for? Make it up with um, better content, helping people
Right.
more success, right?
Yeah.
Could be. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think we're all probably doing that. I know that I am, to a degree, and I have to keep an eye on it, but it feels really good to talk to you and feel more of who you are. Like you talking about your pain, you're talking about your childhood, what that was for you. Like it just makes me feel a lot more connected to you. And it's
Wow.
like it's good to know that part of you. And it's very, yeah, it is. It's touching, it's moving. And it makes me admire and respect you even more.
This is probably a good question that I should have asked in the beginning of the podcast. But how do you have a good podcast where you let go of control? And are you just being with a person and getting into the flow? Because I know when we message each other, you were also very excited about like being in the present moment, being in the flow. How can, for example, this podcast, what do you think makes it more connective or better when two people meet on podcasts in general or in life? How can people let go of that control? And is it even good to let go of that control completely? Because maybe it's better to give more value in the plan, but then do you reach the people who are so obsessed with structure and plan and value? Or if you open up your heart more and let go of control, do you reach people energetically through the screen?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I have a bias, obviously. Like I'm okay, like talking about concepts and you know what I think. Like there's people that are better at it, like you are. You know, my strength comes in really asking the questions, right, and being in relationship. And for me, that's what therapy is. That's what how I'm thinking about it. It's like I remember one of my you know, teachers said to me, like, you know, if you're going to be a therapist, you have to get in relationship with your clients because they got hurt in relationship and they're only going to heal in relationship. So you have to be in there with them. And I was like, fuck, I don't want to do that. I don't want to have to get close to people, but it's been incredibly healing for me. And I know that the more open and vulnerable that I am and honest and straightforward, the more I'm essentially giving permission to the client so that I'm teaching through the example. And so one of the things that's important for me to teach or what I want to teach is to stay in the moment. And so like with my workshops, I don't ever know what I'm going to do next. I mean, I have a basic outline and a plan, but just like Steppenwolf, it's all improvisation. And all I'm doing is trying to stay in that moment and trust that if I can stay present in that moment, the next idea is going to come, the next thought, the next word. I don't have to go searching for it. I don't have to figure anything out. It's all right here, because my feeling is that we heal in the present moment, right? When we're able to live in the present moment, because when we're in the present moment, we're not in control. Like if you're actually present, you have no idea what's going to happen next. You're not thinking about the past. You're not thinking about the future. You're not thinking about where it's going to go next. And we all know how good that feels. That's why we do different things, you know, sports or whatever, because it feels, or sex, or watch a sunset. Like it feels so good to be in that moment. And so really what I'm trying to do with people, what I try to do with Tate, what I'm trying to do, you know, with you right now, is just come into the present moment and to be with each other, and then to see what's there. And if you allow things to arise from that place, like something beyond the mind, right? Something will emerge. And you know, what I try to do is just trust whatever emerges. And so that's the phrase that I'm using, you know, all the time in my sessions and in the workshops. I have to trust whatever's happening. In other words, have no agenda. And so if it goes off in this direction, I could say, oh, I didn't want it to go off in this direction. Why are we going off in this direction? Well, now I'm not present.
Yeah.
I'm judging what's happening, and that's no good. So it's like, oh, it's going off this direction. I got to follow it, right? I got to trust that. I don't know what this is. I don't know where it's going, but if I trust it, if I believe in it, if I have faith in it, that faith, that trust will hold the container, right? And that it will lead it to wherever it is it wants to go, because, you know, I'm just following the energy.
Well, it's working because no, I'm serious.
Yeah.
I'm feeling more. I'm viscerally feeling more, and I'm smiling. I'm not, but totally authentically, I'm letting myself smile. Like there's emotions coming through me, And usually, like, I've done this a lot. Like, I've done a lot of podcasts. I've done a lot of Instagram lives. I was guest on a lot of podcasts. But usually I'm like, okay, this needs to give value. This needs to like get done. And I know how to structure things so I can do this. And it's like this fear of then, okay, yeah, if I let go of control, but what if I mess up the podcast, David? What if I mess it up? That wouldn't be good.
You can't mess it up.
What if I mess up my videos? I cannot just like be in the present moment talking into the camera. I'm joking.
Why not? Why not? I know you could. Yeah.
I could, and probably I do even. I probably do just, but I probably do that. Just right now, I can tell you, I'm definitely more open, and I don't like it.
You don't like it?
I'm playing the game.
Yeah, you are.
I'm doing this for my audience. I'm doing this. Well, it's very magical, the present moment, right? You cannot.
Yeah.
There is no words to define it. It's like, what is love? What is God? What is the present moment? Can we really say what it is? No, we cannot. We can just be in it, and then maybe something comes out of it. But the brain then comes in, okay, but where's the results? Where's the effect? How do I know this works? Give me a study. David, what kind of voodoo are you doing here with me? Is this even helpful? If yes, explain to me why.
How's it feel?
What's happening? How's it feel? It feels like...
how's it feel when you come all the way present with me and you give up any...
my chest. It feels in like here, where the Tupac sign is.
Yeah.
It feels more opening, like, I don't know, like, if I feel more emotions.
Good.
Yeah.
That's good, right?
I don't know if that's good.
Well, you're maybe, and we talked about it earlier, maybe it's uncomfortable. Right. Listen, it's uncomfortable to be open. It's uncomfortable to be vulnerable because we're wide open. And usually, like, we have habitual defenses and we don't even know it. Right.
No,
like, they're just there.
I want to be the best, and I want to do the best podcast.
Right.
It's totally in the way of that, David.
Yeah. And what happened?
It got me where I'm at, but I see how I need to integrate. This is partly, I think I need to integrate more because it would also benefit, I think, it's healthy, right?
What's healthy?
It's healthy to, it's a big part of emotional health, probably, opening up like that.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. What happens if you're not the best? What's your image? Like, if you're not the best, what? It wouldn't be good? Why?
The best at expressing my potential, the best at doing the best I can, right?
Right. But it sounds like you have an image of what that looks like. Like, you have to do, like, is there still a place inside you? It's just a question.
Yeah, of course.
And that still feels like you have to do something, like be good, be successful in order to be loved.
I don't think it's not to be loved. It's not to be loved.
To feel safe. Like, I wonder, considering like all the fear that you experienced as a boy, there must be some part of you, and this is true for me, that would react to that by trying to create a life that would allow you to feel safe. I mean, one of the things I could say about Tate, right? And I don't like to psychoanalyze him, publicly, and so I'm not really going to do that. But I could speculate, right? And I would say this to him, that he admitted his father was terrifying. He was scary as fuck, right? And so I can imagine that some part of him would want to create a life where he felt totally safe. And what would that look like? I'm fucking jacked. I can kick the shit out of anybody, so I'm safe. I got a shitload of money, and that keeps me safe. And so like I said, I became an actor so that I could get famous, so I could be special, so I could win the love of my mother, right? And am I over that? That's probably always there, like, and I just have to keep an eye on it and make sure that I'm really coming from like the deepest part of myself. But you know, that drove me for a long time. And so I can imagine for you that maybe there was some unconscious impulse. It's like, if I become successful, if I become the best, if, you know, whatever it is, that I'm going to be safe. Like I can't be hurt anymore. Does that make sense? Does
Yeah,
that track for you?
I love because what you said about Andrew Tate,
Mm-hmm.
I think the exact same thing. And
Right.
I don't blame you. I don't blame him. I don't blame me for trying to create an atmosphere where if it would be safety, where it would be safe. I think safe is definitely a part of it. I think another part is just showing myself that I'm amazing, that I created my full potential.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe showing myself, showing the world and safety. Can it be like a triple thing? Or maybe I have to dig deeper and see it could be safety, but there's no definitive answer right now that I have.
Well, it doesn't, maybe it doesn't matter, you know,
Yeah.
it doesn't necessarily matter.
But with that knowledge, it's still like, and this is why I resonate with Andrew because I feel the same. It's like, it's still like a world where there's wolves out there. And so I
Yeah.
got to be the bigger wolf, which means like I still have to pay rent. I still
Yeah.
have to take care of my family.
Yeah.
I still have to like do a lot of things. Yes, I can be vulnerable in all those things, but is is it going to help me to do those things? And if it's not, why would I go that route? You
Yeah.
know?
I understand. I guess the
What would be
argument,
the other way? What would be the other option? Is there another
well,
option?
well, you wouldn't necessarily have to give any of those things up. It's, you
Hmm.
know, I wouldn't say that Andrew would have to give up his money or give, you know, give up being tough. But I think it's important for all of us to understand what may be motivating us unconsciously. I want to know what's
That's
motivating
right.
me. I want to know why
That's right.
I'm doing what I'm doing.
Hmm.
Because if I don't know,
That's bad.
and I'm not really conscious, well, and eventually I'm going to get myself into some trouble.
Exactly.
Right. And which is what happened to me. And that's why I got into this, because I realized, like, holy shit, I've been living my life motivated by all of these unconscious feelings. And I'm not truly free, even though on paper, like, hey, I was a successful actor in Hollywood. I had a nice house. I had a, you know, beautiful girlfriend. Like, I mean, I had it all, but it wasn't truly in alignment with the deepest part of me. Not that it was bad. I mean, I had a great time and I was, you know, expressing myself and learning a lot. It was all good, but I realized that my life wasn't entirely my own. And then it took me a lot of time to figure out, well, what is it that I want to do? Like, and who am I if I let go of that identity? And that's all. Like, that's all it is. But there's nothing inherently bad or wrong about anything, right? That's it's like nothing. Everything we do is just an adaptation. It's neutral, right? And that's the main thing. Like, you know, that I try to explain to my clients. It's like when they start to realize that, oh, maybe I've been acting this way or doing this thing or whatever it is, you know, getting in these repetitive cycles in relationships, or we're not working out or eating too much or procrastinating, whatever it is, they tend to judge themselves. But in some way, all of it was just an adaptive, or you might say maladaptive behavior. Like,
Mm.
that's what they had to do to survive their childhood. So that strategy in and of itself worked. It was good, right? It's just not working anymore, right? Because you're no longer a helpless child in that environment. And at the time, you know, when you think about a kid vulnerable and helpless, they can't take care of themselves. They have no autonomy, right? So they are hardwired to adapt to the situation. They have their priorities to stay connected and in favor with the caregiver. That's the best strategy to survive. So they betray themselves. I mean, I've heard you talk about this in your videos. They betray themselves in order to stay in connection with the caregivers. They have to. It's an imperative. There's no other option. It's the right decision that they have to make. But what happens is that that becomes embedded in our psyche. That just becomes a way of being. And it feels like, in some sense, who we are. And then we take that out into the world and begin to betray ourselves over and over and over again in the exact same way that we did when we were children, and create the same frustrations that we had. But the truth is, we are no longer a helpless child. We need not betray ourselves anymore. But the child doesn't know that, right? The mind, you might say, doesn't understand that. So, the work, as I see it from my perspective, is am I willing to live my life fully committed to myself, which means I'm never going to betray myself ever again for anything or anyone. That's it. That's the code that I live by.
That's your code.
That's my code. Doesn't mean that I'm not going to, do I do things that I don't want to do? Of course. Because, I'm in a relationship and sometimes you have to compromise, but I'm making that choice, right? Like, I'm not doing things, or I try not to do things out of obligation, because I know it only ends in resentment. And then I'm going to judge and blame. But it's like, it's really, I'm the one that made that choice. And that's, in some sense, that's a crazy concept to a lot of people, because they don't have boundaries, or they don't even know what it is to not betray themselves. Betraying themselves just feels like how you live. And so that, to me, is like, and you could talk about this in a political, social way, is like the self, being true to the self is, I think, the highest, like, it's the highest good.
Is that authenticity?
It's deep authenticity. And it's like, I want that for everybody. Like, I'll say this to all of my friends, everybody in my life. I don't want you to do anything that you don't want to do for me. I don't want you to ever betray yourself for me. I don't want that. And so I'm going to show up the same way. And that's the way we're going to be in relationship. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm not going to hurt your feelings, or you're not going to be disappointed, or my feelings aren't going to get hurt, or I'm going to be disappointed, but that's okay. I prefer that we all be true to ourselves and figure out a way to stay in relationship, as opposed to, because the moment you betray yourself to stay in relationship, you're in an enmeshment, you're in a lie. On some level, like unless you're doing it consciously, you're making that choice. But very often we do these things unconsciously. So the moment you're in a lie in a relationship, or you've betrayed yourself, like now you're enmeshed, and that it's only going to lead to resentment and problems that are going to materialize, like, oh, you didn't do the dishes, or, you're not making enough money, whatever it is. It's not, that's just a story, right? But underneath, what's true is, that we gave ourselves away in order to stay in connection, right? Because we thought that if I'm true to myself, I'm going to lose the connection. That's the belief we have.
That's right.
And if I'm alone, I'll die, because the child, they can't tolerate being alone. I mean, they literally will die. If they're abandoned, they will die. And even, on a primitive level, we need to stay in connection with the tribe to survive. And you see this all the time, with whether it's, liberals or conservatives, they're all like insane because they, on some level, there's this primitive instinct that they have to stay connected to the tribe for survival. And what I think is happening, and this is, the astrologers will all tell you this, the age of Aquarius, like, we're coming into an age where we're of, the sovereign individual, where we can actually all be who we are fully, but still be together. Right. And that feels like a beautiful reality, where you don't need to be anything other than who you are for me. And I don't need to be anything other than who I am for you. And if tomorrow, we go out and we have dinner, we have a great time, and then Sunday it's like, oh, let's go out again. And you're like, I can't, or I'm busy, or I don't want to, maybe I feel hurt, but that's okay. You know, I can tolerate, I don't have to take that on as some rejection. It's just like, we don't have to put demands on other people that they be some way for us,
Yeah.
that I don't have to feel something. And to me, that's freedom. And that's what I'm trying to teach. And that's what I'm trying to live. I don't do it perfectly, obviously, but I do the best I can because I know that gives me the best result. And generally, people respect it because they want the same thing.
Now, how do you connect that to the concept of loyalty? Because I have a brother, I resonate so much with Andrew and Tristan, and
Yeah.
like communities are like that because on the leftist side, for example, there's a complete lack of emotional fitness
Yeah.
and loyalty. It's all about my feelings, my feelings, my feelings, my feelings, right? But you cannot build a community like that. So, for example, if my brother wants me to pick him up from the airport, and I don't like, that might
You
not
don't
be
want
really,
to.
but I don't feel like I'm like,
Yeah.
it's not even about, there's no debate. I actually want to because I love him. Is that
Yeah.
more, is that connecting to the philosophy of that's still my authentic me? Because I do want to because
Yeah.
I love him.
Yeah.
But there might be, I don't know, other situations where you don't want to do something, but you do it because it's your value of loyalty.
That's fine, but that you're making a choice, right? It's like you're not doing it out of obligation. You're doing it because you want to take on that responsibility and you do that willingly. It's different than I don't want to pick up my brother, but I'm going to go pick him up because if I don't pick him up, he's going to be pissed at me and there's going to be all this bullshit or he's not going to like me anymore. Or what, like you're going to tell
No, it's an
yourself a
action of
story.
love, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But if you do it out of like, yeah, because I want to do it. Like there's lots of things, that I want to have a great relationship.
Mhm.
And that requires me to do things. And there's times where I don't want to do them or in that moment
Yeah.
because I'm tired or I just want to like zone out. But it's like I'm committed to this relationship.
Right.
And I know ultimately that good relationship is going to serve me really well. So I'm in some way, I'm not doing it for her. If I'm only doing it for her, I'm going to feel resentment. I have to find that place inside me that says, I have to do this for me because I want this connection and I want this relationship. So because the moment I'm like, I don't really want to do it, but I'm going to do it for her because she's going to be upset if I don't do it. It doesn't work that way. And by the way, she's going to feel that and I'm not going to be present with her and it's not going to fucking work anyway.
That's right.
Right. It's not going to give her or me what we want. So, I think there's one guy like minimize your obligations and increase your responsibilities, right? And that's a code that I try to
Like
live
that.
by. I try not to do anything out of obligation, but if I switch it to I want to do this, even if it's going to be difficult, because that's a responsibility that I want to take on, and taking on that responsibility ultimately serves me.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then it's a win-win for everybody. I mean, I work my ass off at our sweat lodge, chopping wood, getting rocks all the time. I don't always want to do it, but the feeling I get from doing it, from that commitment and going at the lodge every Wednesday, knowing like the wood that is burning in the fire is wood that I chop, that gives me a good feeling. And so it's worth it.
That's right. So a big code or the biggest code you live by is to not betray yourself.
That's right.
How does presence fit? Is presence like one of the second codes or like part of the kind of formula
Well,
you live by?
yeah, it's a great question. So when I'm present, I'll never, and if I'm really present with what I'm feeling and I'm willing to speak the truth of what I'm feeling in that moment, right? I will never betray myself.
Say that again.
If I'm fully present, right? And I'm connected to what I'm feeling,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm connected to the truth, right, of what I'm feeling, I will never betray myself. The only time I betray myself is when I'm not present.
Okay. So
Does that
follow up
make
question.
sense?
Yeah. follow-up question, which will be really interesting for everybody watching
Yeah.
and me. What's the best process to connect to the present moment?
Well, I think meditation is a really important practice for that. And I think you have to practice it all the time. I mean, practice it taking a shit. Like, don't bring your phone in. Like, just take a shit
Mhm.
and just be with the shit,
Right.
or be with your food. Like, practice that. And that's a very important way that you can develop presence. And there's so many distractions out there. But I think the main one is, because that's one thing, but it's a whole other thing to be present in relationship to another person. Right? That's where it gets really difficult. And we all have fear, because if we come all the way into presence and we kind of lose control, and we're just going to kind of be like, what I'm going to say, whatever comes up. I mean, a lot of people, this practice of circling. Have you heard about this? Circling is a big thing. They do it here in Austin, but it's all over the world. And essentially it's a practice of sitting in front of other people and just like trying to be in the truth, like just trying to say what's true for you as it arises.
Oh, wow.
Without any judgment of anything, not worrying about the implication of what it is you're saying. And I think it's a really, really powerful practice. And I did a lot, not circling specifically, but that kind of practice in my training. So I just got really good at just saying what was true for me, not being concerned about the consequence of what I was saying, how it may impact the other person, or even if it was, I don't want to say true, but like I may say one thing in this moment and then I may say something else in the next moment. And am I just willing to not attach, right? To just let it come through and to trust it, right? To trust, and that the truth, right? If I can connect to it, even the truth in the moment, even if it's somewhat distorted, even if it's hard to get all the way to the truth, it's always moving things forward. It's always moving it closer to connection, right? Because if I betray myself to stay in connection with you, right? If I try to present something, or be a certain way so that we can stay connected, well, I'm not connected to myself, right? I'm kind of reading you, and I'm like, okay, I'm here I am, I'm with Jesse, and it's like, what does he want? How does he want me to show up? How does he want me to be in this podcast? And I'm kind of, but in some way, I'm manipulating you in some way. Like I'm not being my true self. So in the place where I'm not being authentic, there's no connection, because I'm in my mask. And so the only way to get the true connection that we want, which is what we're all longing for. I mean, nothing feels better than deep intimacy. Nothing feels better than to be known by another person, to really let them in all the way. It's fucking terrifying, but that's what we're all longing for. Right. And the only way to do that is to come all the way in the present moment and be authentic and to risk it, whatever it is, at all costs. The truth at all costs.
You cannot do the truth with people who don't wish well-being for you.
Why not?
They might use the truth to put you into a dangerous situation.
That's true. Well, I mean, you can be discerning. I'm not suggesting that. Obviously there's consequences to things, but you want to know the truth inside yourself, and you want to know that you've made that decision, right? Like, I know what the truth is. I know what I want to say, whatever it may be. And I'm going to make a decision about whether or not I'm going to say it in this situation. I mean, I have a friend, she voted for Trump, and she was at a party at a wedding, and there was all people who hated Trump, and it came up, and she was like, made a decision, like she wasn't going to say anything because she just didn't want to deal with it. Now, she said, I regret that, because the next time that happens, I'm going to say something, but in that moment, she made a decision, to not say anything, because she didn't want the hassle. Maybe she didn't want to be judged. And that's okay. Like that is okay. We're allowed to be discerning, but we don't want to rationalize it, right? Like we want to know what the truth is inside ourselves, and we want to know what we're feeling. We want to know what we're thinking. You know, it's separate from like the environment, separate from what people think, because you know, like I said earlier, like, and I think your audience will relate to this. Like most of us, when we walk into a room, and even like we're reading the room in some sense.
That's right.
Right? Like we're not just rolling in present like
Yeah.
ourself. We're sort of shaping ourselves in some way to adapt to what this is. And that's fine. Like we all have a mask, you know, it's okay. But we want to be aware of what we're doing. But what I've found is like when I roll into a room, the more myself that I am, the more it puts people at ease. And the
That's
more
right.
people tend to like be drawn to me because I'm not putting anything on and I'm not pretending anything. I'm just there. And I'm not trying to perform or be a certain way for anybody or try to affect the way that they see me or how I would like them to see me. Right? Like if you give up, totally give up, and I think you've done this, right? I'm going to give up worrying about what anybody thinks of me, right? I'm just going to show up as I am, and how they think of me really has nothing to do with me. Like it's all projection anyway, right? And if you can like sit in that space, which is a really hard thing to do, you really are free. And I think like that's like some Obi-Wan Kenobi shit, you know, like you really can become a wizard through like a deep sense of presence. Presence wins the day every fucking time. But it's not an easy thing to do because those old habits, those old patterns, they die hard, you know, but that's what I'm trying to do. You know, I'm trying to be as present as I can in every situation. Like, you know, that's what I'm trying to do right now. Am I successful at it? Not 100%, of course not. But like I know that one, there's less effect. Like I'm less in affectation, and there's more possibility for genuine connection, and there's more possibility for like an interesting conversation or for things to go into the unknown. Like I think this is a really interesting conversation,
It
right?
is.
And neither of us knows where it's going next, and
No.
probably neither of us knows, is this any good? Is this working? Like what's the audience going to think? I don't know. Like I'm trying to get out of that evaluation, but and just to trust and just dissolve into whatever's happening.
You're very, your presence is out there right now. I've seen, just in research from to talk to you, I've seen a few podcasts with you, and I think like you know how to get present. And in the Andrew one, you managed, even though Andrew is who Andrew is, to stay very present. But definitely today, it's one of my. I think this is like I'm gonna watch this podcast. Just you're very present right now, and you're very shining. Like this is one of, if presence is a performance, this is a really great performance of being present. And I know people will get this on one part rationally, but on the other part just energetically.
Right.
Like even if people sometimes I think there's so many people watching streamers or people like personalities, and I think yes, some of them might only give entertainment, but that doesn't mean that they don't give them a certain field of connection, a certain field of presence. You don't necessarily have to teach someone something about the brain to make their day. If we can maybe just have a present conversation, the audience can feel something and goes deeper. And I think one of the people who can do this very well is Joe Rogan.
Yeah. He's incredibly present.
That might be like one of the keys of his success of his podcast, because he just stays in conversation. Now, he's not perfect. No one's perfect. But that probably is one of the keys, that he just goes with the conversation.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that you taught me here today. And I would love to do the first off, when you go into a room, how do you avoid reading the room? Because almost
Well,
everybody does it.
yeah. Well, I mean, listen, I've been around. I'm a little older now. I have some experience. I've let go a lot of my ego that I had when I was a younger man. It does get easier when you get older. It kind of, you relax a little bit.
Do you have a formula?
Well, I just trust that that I have something to bring, like that I I'm not trying to, well, no, here's what it is. I'm trying to enjoy people,
Hmm.
like
Wow.
and I want to connect and I want to have a good time. And so I find usually the best way is to just ask people questions. So when I'm introduced to somebody, I just ask them questions about themselves. People love to talk about themselves. And that puts you in a place where you actually have to listen.
Mhm.
And if you're listening, you're present. And usually, I mean, I definitely develop a skill of, people will open up to me, even if it's just a little bit, and then that creates more space for me to open up to them. And so we're having a genuine conversation. So, I've developed a certain kind of social skill to be able to do that. But for your audience, I think that would be the main thing. If you're trying to get something, people can feel it,
That's right.
right? If you want to be seen in a certain way, people are going to feel it. They feel your need,
Yeah.
right? And
The takers, right?
people, yeah, people's needs, especially when they're unconscious, are repulsive, right? It pushes
That's
people
right.
away.
That's right.
So the way to combat that is to actually give, right? And you in that situation, you do that simply by um asking questions. I mean, you have to read people and meet them where they're at, certainly. But just if you stay present in the moment and just you're genuinely curious about people. I mean, people are, oh, how do I network? Just ask people questions. Like be
Yeah.
genuinely curious about who they are and what they are, and you'll get somewhere, and people will remember that, especially if you ask interesting questions.
Do you think presence kind of will inspire you to go into a conversation that, if it needs to lead somewhere by a higher power? I don't like the idea actually by that something is written, because it takes away from my own responsibility to make free choices.
Right.
Do you think presence kind of opens up to the conversation to go in a certain way that's advantageous to a human being's thriving, I guess?
Yeah, I do. I think that I think um listen, this is like classic spirituality, in the Lakota, the word is, matakiasin or matakioasin, which is all are related, which means everything is one thing. Everything's connected.
That's right.
And that's the truth, right? We're all connected. We're all one thing. It's like the tree of life, and we're all leaves in that tree of life. So in the place where we feel separation from that, we're suffering and we're not in the truth. And so I think we're all longing to be connected, to feel connected with other people, to feel that we're actually, when I look in the eyes of someone, I see myself reflected back, that underneath it all, like underneath the personality, underneath the skin and the hair and everything else, the gender, that underneath it there is a common life force that is animating all of us. And so the only way to get in touch with that is to come all the way into that present moment where you're like bypassing the identity self. Right now, we always have to play with it. Right, it's always there. Like you can't escape it. We're here on this plane. We're human
Mhm.
beings. We have desires. We're You know, we're primitive in a lot of ways, but there's that other part of us, that observer self. And the more we do practices like meditation, the more we can, you know, rest in that place and allow it just to be there, and allow that to guide what it is that's happening, and let it like trust it. And so that means getting out of the rational mind and trusting where it is that it wants to take you. So it's like, if I have an impulse to go over there, I'm going to go over there. If I see somebody and I keep noticing them, it's like, I'm going to follow that. I don't know what it's about. I don't know anything, but I have to, as you said, I have to follow my curiosity. I have to follow my excitement. If you just keep following that without worrying about what it means, and just be open to whatever it is, like, life is going to unfold for you in magical ways. And we all know that. Everybody fucking knows that, right? Like, that's not some crazy esoteric fucking thing. Every single person knows that that's true.
Yeah.
And yet we don't do it because we don't like the feeling of being out of control. Right. But the truth is, it's like, we have to say, you know, people can call it spirit. Like the Lakota, it's just everything's spirit. Oh, no, spirit. It's just spirit. It's like spirit's at work, and you just surrender to it. You don't have to figure it out. You don't have to make sense of it. You just let it go, and you just trust it. And I don't know, I just think it's like a beautiful way to live life. And again, I don't do it perfectly. You know, I get caught in my head, and I get caught in my story, and caught in, you know, my pettiness and my arrogance and my judgments, you know, like anybody else. But it's like, the more I return to that place, and the more I practice it, the more I live from that place. And then magical things happen. Like, I'm in fucking Romania interviewing Tate.
That's right.
You know what I mean? Like, I didn't plan that. Like, how the fuck did that happen? Right? Like, my mind could not have conceived that. Like, something happened where, you know, like, something happened that was beyond me that made that happen. And when I got there, I could feel like, oh, there's something magical here.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what this is, but I can feel like there's something. And I've had that happen in my life before. And it's like, well, why don't I just live my life from that place? Why don't I just constantly be following my impulses? Stop trying to figure fucking anything out.
I think there's something growing in you, and I think more of a recognition also how to move forward in surrender. Even you reaching out back in the day to him, right? Just like he was saying, oh, I'm open to podcasts. But then the trust that he has in you, and also the connection he must have with you. And he knows, he's also, he analyzed people. He knows that you mean well for him, right?
Yes, yes.
The podcast he had before where Patrick Bat Davis, like huge, like millions and millions and millions of followers of podcasts. But he wanted you afterwards, right? Mm-hmm. Which speaks just to your ability to be with someone in conversation. I mean, when I saw your podcast was, I think my favorite. It was my favorite one from all the podcasts. I liked some old school podcasts from him, even the one that he did with, what's the guy's pickup artist guy's, Rollo Tomasi. But the old one, because Tate was still not under the pressure of having to be, now that he got canceled, to use certain, he was just like spitting because he never knew that it would get so big. So I liked him being just unfiltered. Yeah,
a little more raw.
And then with you, he was also more unfiltered. It was also in the beginning, he was just like saying shit, right?
Yeah.
And but people said, and you saw it in the comments, and he even said he saw it in the comments, and he got the messages that your podcast was the favorite podcast of people because you asked. First off, everybody asked the fucking same questions.
I know.
The same questions. How was it to be canceled? How was social media? Muslim, this, which is all great, but we heard it 999 times on every single one, right?
Yeah.
Women can't drive, this, that. Why did you say that? Okay, but then you coming along and bringing this vulnerable, like trying to figure out this person, but not from a logical place, but actually connecting with it. I had so much respect when you went on the second podcast, because by then Tate is the biggest motherfucker in the world. Like he's literally the most Googled person alive. And yeah, and at a time, I think last year or so, maybe still, but then you coming into this place where it's like, okay, a lot of people gonna see it, but you still managed to not plan it out. I
No,
was like, what the
no.
fuck? Because I saw you then, but you just like went with the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
It was it and it makes, I think it makes the audience feel seen, or it makes not, maybe not seen, it makes them feel some authenticity and some realness compared to, okay, this is how we structure the questions. I really want to ask this. And I love Patrick Bet David and the questions they ask were great.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
There
love
was
PBD.
something to it where you just like connected to him, and I could tell he was a little on he was a little
Yeah.
uncomfortable at times to be, because people probably not always be with him like that, because he's, unless they're brother, right? Brother knows him since he's
Yeah.
a kid.
Yeah.
But I'm sure there's some people around him that are like, oh, if I fuck up with him, then I lose my job, or I'm I lose my job, or I lose this opportunity. So I have to make sure I put on this certain thing.
Yeah.
Whereas you just came, and that's like experience. You can't teach that.
Yeah.
You must have
Yeah.
practiced that times and times and times again, because you can teach someone, oh, this is how to be present, this is how you be in these challenging situations, to still like be vulnerable and be like, I don't betray myself, I go with my authentic self, and I want to connect with this person, I want to be curious about this person. It's beautiful. How was that experience of you just, I guess, how was the, you took the flight, right? You
Yeah.
already know going there, and you arrive at the house. How is the experience from a person with your level of awareness going through this, and you being that person going through this?
Well, I got there the day before and I came over, we had dinner. There was like a large group of people there. So and then, we smoked cigars. And so I kind of broke the ice and hung out a little bit and uh came back the next day. And, I'd been thinking about it for a while, obviously. And I had some questions I knew that I was going to ask him, or I thought I might ask him. And I thought about coming in with something written down, but I just said, nah, man, I gotta wing this. I knew that the only way to really make it great is that I had to risk staying totally in the moment. So
That's
I
crazy.
honestly had no idea what I was going to say next.
Mm.
And um
Did he know
I,
that?
I don't know what he knew. I don't know. I mean, I told him afterwards, I said, but I didn't really prepare. But that's the thing. If you stay present, I mean, like it's what I've learned as in the practice of the therapy. It's like if I stay present and I just really listen. I mean, this is a skill you have to have as an actor too. You have to listen,
Right.
right? And then you have to trust. Like as an actor, you have to trust that when it's your turn to speak, the line's going to be there.
That's
Like
right.
you don't have to. If you're thinking about what you're going to say, you're not actually present. You're not listening, and the camera can read that. Like the camera will see, and so when you see a great performance, what you're seeing as an actor is totally dissolved into the present moment.
The skill is a huge skill.
It's a huge skill, and so I learned it through acting, and then I learned it as a therapist, like that I'm just going to trust, like it's going to come, like the idea, the thought, and sometimes I'm listening, and I have no idea that what I was going to say, and there was a moment where he went on this like crazy rant. He was just on fucking fire. And it was probably about 20 minutes in. And I was just like on the wide shot, you just see me like, and I'm thinking like, I don't know. I don't have anything. Like, I don't know what the fuck I'm going to say to this. And I remember thinking, well, just come into the present moment. And what are you actually feeling? And when he finished talking, I just started laughing. And I was kind of like, and allowing myself to just enjoy him as this
That's right.
incredible, almost like
Speaker.
orator,
Yeah.
powerful man. And then I let myself laugh. And then the next thought came, which was, you're amazing. It's like, you can take anything I say and turn it. You know what I mean? And then immediately he knew he was caught. I said, it's almost like a trick.
Yeah, you call it out.
I called him out. I'm like, you have a game you're playing. Now, I didn't have that thought until I allowed myself to just enjoy the moment. Like, I didn't have that thought until the moment I said it.
Yeah.
And so that was an act of like deep trust. And that's a skill that I've, perfected. I don't know if I perfected it, but I've gotten a lot better at it through the years, through just practice and practice and practice, mostly in my workshops. And yeah, if you can really, and this is for everybody, like this is what life is. If you can just allow yourself to come all the way into the moment and really listen and be present, it's like, that's all you have to do. You don't have to do anything else. You just have to be there. Right. That's like, and even as a therapist, it's like all children want is they want their parents to be present for them. And we can feel when somebody's present, you can feel when they're all the way there. Right. It's like, it's actually like you feel it in your body.
That's right.
Right. And it's comforting.
Yeah.
And you can feel when somebody's not there. You can feel when they're just slightly, if you're on a date or you're lying in bed with your man or your woman, and you can feel when they're there and when they're not.
That's right.
And, we're very sensitive to that. Your dog can fucking feel it. Dog knows when you're there. Believe me, that when you're not there present with your dog on a walk, they're fucking misbehaving. Right. But if you're present and they feel you, they're like, oh, okay, this guy's right here. So you want to get like notice for yourself when I'm not talking to you, I'm talking to everybody. Like, when you lose presence, where do you go? And what is it in the present moment that you don't want to feel? Right? Like, there's something, why is it hard to stay in the present moment?
That's right.
What is it? Because it's uncomfortable, because there's no control. Right. And so it's like that was the test, and I was definitely nervous about it, but I knew the only fucking way it was going to work. I knew the only way it was going to work is if I risked staying in the present moment. Because what happens if I'm risking staying in the present moment, if I'm not prepared, then there's an edge. There's actually an edge in the interview. And if I don't know what's going to happen next, he doesn't fucking know what's going to happen next. If I don't know what I'm going to say next, he certainly doesn't know what the fuck I'm going to say next.
That's right.
And that's got to put him on edge. And if he's sitting across from a person that is actually listening and looking at him and paying attention, that's going to make him fucking nervous. But also, on the other hand, he's going to like it.
It's exciting.
It's going to open him up. It's
boring.
exciting.
He probably gets interview question. He knows the 3 next questions the person's going to ask.
Yeah, like the Tucker interview was just like fucking boring, because it was more like Tucker's like, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? And it's just like a performance, right? And Tate can do it, and he does it better than anybody. But I was watching the interview about, like, I don't know, 20 minutes in, I was like, he looks bored to me. Like, there's nothing.
He has a script in his head already running down. Yeah. You can't have a script if you stay with him in uncertainty.
Right. And it's fun for him, right? Like, he wants the challenge. Like, he wants to live. Who doesn't? Who doesn't want to live in that place? Who doesn't want to feel the tension of that?
What happens, like we really don't want to know what happens, because it was so boring.
Exactly. So that's the skill, and it's a skill, and you could practice it, and that's where life is, So
I would love to see a workshop you give on maybe you put it up or someday on YouTube on how to be present, how to give present interviews, not to betray yourself. These concepts are beautifully. I don't know. I don't want to take too much of your time, but we're in the present moment. So I'm going to.
Yeah.
Can I ask you some more questions?
Yeah.
How much time do we actually have? I don't want to like.
We could take another 10 or 15. Yeah, because it's getting late here in Texas.
Okay. I have so many questions. I actually had well, first off, my favorite part of the interview with you and Andrew Tate, and I don't have this actually written down, I just remember that, was when you compared him to a painter, an artist.
Yeah.
The way he speaks. And his answer, and I'm very particular because I like to learn from people. When I listened back to it a few times, he said, people like when I talk because it's almost like he said, I really mean what I say. I talk with emotions.
Yeah.
He talks through his emotions. So he
Yeah.
actually lets himself feel
Yeah.
while he talks. Now,
Yeah.
I know he said, I don't know how to be in the present, blah, 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 but I think he actually knows. He just doesn't know. I think
Yeah.
he speaks. Sometimes he might like go with the script, but I see him a lot of times speak through his emotions, really, and you can see it in his face. My dad is like my dad,
Yeah.
he's very authentic. My dad, when he talks and he tells you a story, he has every emotion on
Yeah.
his face, and it's very captivating. Do you think that is my question? Actually, I gave this before, but the question that I wrote down is, what is this? Since you met him and spent some time actually in a room with him and are good at observing, you would be great person to ask this question. Why does Andrew stand out in a room? And he's not only standing out on social media. Why is he standing out in the room, even if there's other big creators around him? Why is he standing out? Why is he has such a presence?
Well, yeah, no, despite what he said in the interview, he has tremendous presence. I mean, I think there's places where it's harder for him to get present, but I mean, he's all the way there. He's incredibly charismatic. He's incredibly handsome. And like I said, was in Hollywood for a long time. I've been around a lot of movie stars. It's like I've never seen anything like that. Like the charisma coming off that guy is it's something else. So I don't know what that is. It's just
What
like
is charisma? Is that presence? What is charisma? What does that mean?
well, I don't know. That's a good question. I'm not sure what that is. There's just I mean, you have it. There's just some quality, some characteristic. I think it is there is a way that he's very present in his body. I mean, fighters have to be present. They have to learn to be present. So he's got a deep relationship with his body. I think he's got a tremendous amount of confidence. I think he's got a very strong will. He's very, very smart. And I think he has a certain kind of command of himself and of the situation. And he's like a king. Like you feel it. Like he's the guy you're going to follow. He's the guy you're going to listen to. Not
He's
that
unapologetically himself.
That's right. He's unapologetically himself, and he's kind, right? Like you can feel that he's got a good heart. And so I think people, because of that, people give him the people who know him who are in his orbit, they give him a lot of space, right? Because they understand the burden that comes when you take on that responsibility. Like, heavy is what is it? Heavy is the crown of the king, whatever it is. Like it's a burden that leaders like that have to bear. And so, and he bears it really well. And it's almost like he was just born into that role, and that there's something, I don't know, people are just born a certain way, be a certain way. And I feel strongly like he's living out his mission and he's true to it. And it's, where does that come from? I don't know. Like, is that his karma? I have no idea, but like he's in alignment with his purpose, and he's expressing himself all the time. I do consider him in some sense an artist, and the way that he speaks and how he speaks, that I've never seen anybody like that. I mean, it's astonishing.
It is
what he can do. I mean, he can just
captivating.
Like for an hour, and it's perfect. And
he's so unapologetic. Everything's behind it. It's like, this is how it is. I don't care what you think.
Yeah.
Isn't that exactly what you said? He's not betraying himself.
That's right.
No matter what people think.
Yeah. And it's incredible to see, and it's inspiring to see. And I think there's a lot of emotion behind it. You can feel his heart, you can feel his love, and you can feel his conviction, and you can feel the courage. And I mean, I think that's why he's so popular, because people are longing for that, especially in a time where it doesn't feel like it's safe to say what you really think. This guy is just saying whatever the fuck he wants, and he's speaking a lot of truth, and it's very insightful, and it's very direct, and it's confrontational, and he's inspiring a lot of people. So I mean, I'm a big fan of his. I love what he's doing, and my intention in going there was, and will continue to be, to support him, because
Right.
I think he's an important figure in the culture. I think he's misunderstood. I think he does, like every human being, have a shadow. That you characters like that, they have to have a shadow.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like revolutionaries are, they're not always nice. Like they
Mhm.
just can't be, right? So I don't judge him,
Yeah.
because of the burden that he's taken on. I just support him. And even if he gets some things wrong, or even if I'm like, you might want
Mhm.
to said that in a different way or whatever, it's all good, right? Like, because I think his heart is in it. And I'm glad that he's around, and I want to, help him in any way that I can.
That's right. He has a great heart, and I'm also so supportive because he helped so many people, hundreds of thousands of men. He gave simple advice on how to deal with their emotions, be ambitious, grow their life. You know how many people go to the gym? He reached more people
Yeah.
than any other person before. He's
Yeah.
a positive, a huge, exactly what he wanted to be, a huge positive force for the world.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna rattle these down, and you can give me like quicker answers
All
since
right.
we
All
don't
right.
have that much time. We covered the what is authenticity and how to be authentic. I love that. Love that we talk about that. We covered what is presence and how to be present, and why we should be present. Um, Actually, David, this was my fourth question. What are the main tools you live by? I know number one is not betraying yourself.
Mm-hmm.
With that is presence. Is there anything
Mm-hmm.
else you want to share that would be useful that you work on right now, that you inspired by, that you found, that you're implementing?
Um, the thing that I always say to people is, I think it's important to live in community. You have to find a community. We're like meant to be around other people, and it's easy to isolate. It's easy to be alone. And I was somebody who did that for a long time, and it really had a negative impact on my mental health. And I knew why I was doing it, but eventually
You were avoiding community?
I was avoiding community, and I was isolating, uh, and I realized I have to be in community, and I
Mhm.
made a decision. It's like, okay, I'm gonna live in community. Like, I have to have a community of people, whatever it is, even if it's a fucking bowling league. Like, get involved in something like where you're around people and you have a shared mission or a shared goal. It's really, really important. We're wired to be that way, and so if we're not involved in some way in something like that, I don't think we're really going to be happy. So I made that commitment, and a lot comes with it, because, people can be extremely annoying, and communities are filled with, politics and nonsense, and it's okay. Like, there's growth there, and you can learn to put up with it. And that I think got back into community when I made a decision that I wasn't going to betray myself, that there was a way that I could show up in community and be my authentic self, and not have to
That's
conform
right.
to the group think, right?
Mm.
I would, the main thing that I would do, this is how I roll, I make myself useful. And so if I'm providing value, and I'm doing the work that's necessary, and I'm showing up a good way, and I got a smile on my face, and I'm always there, then it's like, they give you a lot of space to kind of be yourself.
You're an asset to the community, and then you bring presence to it.
That's right.
I love that.
Yeah.
Um, oh, okay. This is an interesting question. This is going to be just personally about me. What advice would you give me if you were someone who has my best interest in mind? Now, I do believe that you, from getting to know you, the second question part is unnecessary now. You do care about my well-being. So, what advice would you give me moving forward?
Man, I don't know if I have much advice for you. You're killing it, man, and you're doing really, really well. I guess, there's obviously more to talk about. I mean, but I would say to you that that vulnerable part of you, like, is really attractive. Like, it's really, really compelling. And I was happy to see that side of you. Like because I see the side on TikTok, and it's great. Like, it's amazing. But seeing that side of you, really, it made me love you even more. And I have a feeling your audience would feel the same way.
I think that's a big part that I'm going to try to integrate in the future. Seriously. So
Yeah.
this is definitely one of the most impactful, if not the most impactful podcast I've done, because, which I love, you brought me practically through the experience of presence, and I'm going to practice it. I'm going to play around with it more in community with myself. It's probably easier to do it with yourself first and then bring it into community, because around people there's a lot of stimuli, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I'm really excited to start practicing that. Does romantic love exist, or is it just a high of emotions? If love exists, what is it?
Well, man, you talk about this so well. I think that, I mean, romantic love exists. Eros, I think there's different stages of relationship. Again, I'm older. I have I'm at a different stage in my life. Love feels different when you're, in your 50s than it does when you're in your 20s or 30s. But I would say love is, it's a choice, right? Like you ultimately have to wake up every day and choose to love. And I think that's the most courageous act there is. Like, and it's not an easy thing. It's easy to succumb to hate or judgment or resentment, or when we're not getting what we want, or we're not getting our needs met. And it's not that our complaints aren't valid. Like, we need to air our feelings in relationships. But at the end of the day, it's like, you can choose to love. It's a choice that you can make. And it's a noble choice. And whether it's with your partner, because you're not going to be, hot for your partner 24/7.
Mm.
It's just not a thing, right? Eventually it's like, you have to make a choice. Like, and even in the places where they're annoying you, or their habits that you don't like, or a certain way that they are. I mean, I have it with my fiance. There's just times where I'm like, she zones out, right? And it fucking drives me crazy. It's like, babe, I just fucking told you, but what the fuck, and it obviously triggers something in me. But it's like, I have to, like, that's the shadow of some part of her that I love. And so if I'm going to love that other part of her, I have to be willing to love the shadow that comes with it. I have to be willing to accept that, and that's a choice that I get to make. And
Does
so
it hurt you because you feel like she didn't listen?
yeah, I think it triggers something in me from my childhood where I don't, she's not paying attention to me, and that equals she
Yeah.
doesn't care about me, which is not true at all. She just gets lost in her own world, and it's fine.
Yeah, no, I have a big thing about that. Maybe it's close, where through the bullying and me always being myself, I felt like invisible, or like
Oh,
not, I don't know, maybe something in there. I don't know.
that's interesting. Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Who is God?
You know, I mean, Tonka Sheila, we say, with or Wakan Tonka, like in the Lakota, which is my favorite, the incarnation of God. Great spirit, but great mystery. Like, it's a mystery.
Mhm.
And I love that idea that God, like, whatever this is, it's a mystery. And so inherent in that is, like, stop trying to figure it out. Like, I think it's just the animating force, that, like what I talked about earlier, that whatever that intelligence or consciousness is, or that connects all things. and
Exactly.
and that to me is God. And yeah, if we can if we can surrender to whatever that force is, and let it guide us, and to trust the intelligence, that intelligence is greater than the intelligence in our mind. Like, whatever,
Mm.
it doesn't mean that you're not going to experience pain or suffering, because I think that's part of life. Like, there's no avoiding that, but that there is a magic in the universe. And if we can, it's incomprehensible, but we all know it. We all can feel it,
And we can
to me,
connect to it.
and we can
We
connect
are
to it.
it.
Yeah, we
Are
are
it.
it.
We really are
Exactly.
it.
Yes,
We just have to open up to it.
that's right. We just have to let go, surrender, and let it come through us, and trust that.
A lot of times as human beings, we see ourselves, or many sees themselves like separate from nature or separate, but we really like connected. I love the Avatar movie so much. I don't know if you like the
Yeah,
Avatar
of
movies.
course.
When you like connect to the trees and you connect to nature, and we can feel it when we're outside in nature and have the white of the sky and the trees around us and the smell, you feel more connected.
Yeah,
And I don't like so much the idea of the words in a book and trying to regurgitate that
right.
to it's I don't see the connection. I see it more as, can you trust yourself to have the experience, to practice the experience, to find out how to open yourself up to God? Can you trust yourself that you are God and can connect with others? And can you stop, please, fighting about which book is the best book, guys, which will not connect you to God?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so it's interesting. Bashar said, follow your excitement with no insistence on the outcome.
Yes, exactly.
Everything we talked about here is following your excitement with no insistence on the outcome. You said it with so many different things, not
Mhm.
betraying yourself, not when we in the present moment, not trying to get something. What I also wanted to say, Bashar also said, if you want to be a great artist, but you only have a pencil to draw, don't say, I only start drawing once I have markers. I want colorful markers. Start drawing with the pencil as good as you can. Draw with the pencil, and the universe will give you markers. Now, I know from my experience that is true. Can you relate to this statement?
That's great advice as always by Bashar. Yeah, it's the same thing. Maybe it's a slightly different concept, but it makes me think of this. You are entitled to your labor, but not the fruit of your labor, which means like you do to do, like you create to create. And what comes of that is you don't know, but it's just like to be in the joy of creation. And if you do that, good things will come. Right. So like, you make your videos to make the videos, like through the pleasure of actually doing it. And some of them hit, some of them don't, but like in the feeling of connection, but to just create to create. I mean, that's why we're here, is
Yeah.
to make things, to create things. And don't worry about the result. Just just make it, put it out somehow, see what happens.
One more thing. I would
Yeah.
love, and I feel like this inside, at one point, maybe you and me are actually going to do a podcast. Like a
Yeah.
podcast together. Maybe I go to Austin because I would be being in the same room with you. Did I just knock out the? Can you still hear
I
me?
hear you. I hear
Yeah.
you. Yeah.
Being in the same room and like couch next to couch and these kind of conversations,
Yeah.
I think the internet would blow up. And I feel like I found like a person who is like on the same
Mm-hmm.
skill level, and
Yeah.
it feels so easy and effortless. It feels like I don't have to explain it. You already know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
then the things that can emerge out of that. So if it's in the stars or and by the way, that's actually really my first name, Star.
Star.
Middle
Star
name is
Jesse.
Jesse. Last name is Taylor. But if it's like in the stars, or like I would love like to continue some conversation, maybe maybe I don't want to force it, but I think it would be. I just have a feeling it's a
Yeah.
good
Me
idea.
too.
Yeah,
Yeah. I'd love to stay connected.
definitely.
And I would love for you to come. I mean, I got a studio here in Austin, and that's where I am right now.
You do
I
have
mean,
a studio.
yeah,
Oh, I
I have a
thought you were at
studio.
home.
No, I'm in my studio. I mean, this is kind of our media room, but I have a whole room where we do our groups and therapy. And um, I'm I'm probably going to be recording some podcasts. I'm going to be doing some stuff. You should definitely come out to Austin, and we could do something interesting, I think really interesting, and
I'm down to
keep
do a
up the
seminar, like
confirmation. Yeah,
whatever. Like,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
that
Absolutely.
sounds exciting.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I really
Um,
support your mess, the way you are, because it's not, you're not like just saying things, the way you
mhm.
live it. And that's the
Yeah.
people, like you really live it. And that's the people I trust. So there's some other people like that Mark Freeman. I don't know if you know Mark Freeman. He's he
Mark
also
Freeman. I've
really
heard that
lives the
name.
teachings of active. I
Yeah.
follow him on
Oh,
social
okay.
media, but he follows his values. He like
Yeah.
does these things. So I really trust people who don't only like say, but they really live it. And you showed vulnerability and the presence today. So I'm really excited. I never was in Austin, but I will get me an Airbnb and say hi on sometime, you know?
Yeah, man. You got to come to Austin, and we'll put this one out. I'm sure. I mean, I can't wait to see it. I think it was a great conversation. I mean, yeah, we definitely got to do more. Amazing.
Oh, tell everybody, first off, I
Yeah.
remember you had you talked about your pilot that you had. Where can everybody find your pilot? Where can everybody find your work? Where can
Oh,
everybody, if someone wants to work with you, if people want to work with you, come to your
yeah.
workshops, come to your seminar, how can they do these things?
Go to my website, davidsutcliffe.com, or I'm on Instagram at davidsutcliffe33, and you'll see it all there. I've got workshop coming up in December. We haven't announced it yet, and you could apply for coaching, and then this documentary series. You'll see the link for it there. It's all there. And watching the documentary series is quite something. I mean, it's a deep dive. But I'm really looking forward to filming more content where you can actually see the work that I do, not just the conversations, it's somatic work, because it's really fucking powerful. And yeah, maybe we can come out. You can come out here, and we can. I don't know. We'll see.
I
We
love that.
can.
I'm gonna bring a videographer as well and like film
Yeah,
the whole thing and like bring
yeah,
awareness
yeah. Well, that's
for
I
it.
think what I'm going to be doing here is I got some other people coming in, and they're yeah, I want to do sessions with people live, and record them. And I mean, maybe that's not exactly quite right for us, because you have a lot of experience, but we can definitely play around, and whatever, I can show you what it is, because it's really
Excited.
powerful. Yeah,
I
it's
want to
really
check it out.
awesome.
Yeah, I'm open for it.
Amazing, man.
And I would love to, even like if I think it would be so, it would just like breakthrough if you and me talk even about, like Candace Owens does, like talk about like events, but from a perspective of also mental health, like,
Uh-huh. Yeah,
you
I like
know,
that idea. I like that idea too. That's
about,
good. Yeah.
yeah.
Because you're on top of it all.
Yeah. And
And
I have
paying
very,
attention. Yeah, man. I look forward to more. It's great talking to you. Like I said, I'm a big fan. I'm more of a fan after this conversation.
oh,
And
thank you.
I can't wait to see it. I think a lot of people are gonna
There's
love
so
this
many great
conversation.
things in there, I think. And
Yeah.
especially because I feel like I changed through it.
Yes.
Like there's this dance that happens and we both open. So I feel like we both kind of like changed in
Yeah.
whatever way.
Yeah.
But this was like the first podcast where I felt like there was a change happening. And it's like
Yeah.
this hero's journey, right? You
That's
go
right.
through something, you have a challenge, oh, and then opening up and oh, okay, this is how it works. And at the end you come out kind of in a different way. So I think it's
Yeah.
also very impactful for other people. The Star Wars mythology right here. Great. Thank you so much, David.
Thank you, Star.